Jonathan?
Yes, as they're coming in. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:00 p.m. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brandt?
Here.
Director Freeman?
Here.
Director Bertrand?
Here.
Director Flaherty?
Here.
Director Geis?
Here.
Director Aguilar?
Here.
And Director Deschler?
Here.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. All right, we are going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they'd like to pull? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move
to approve. Second.
Okay, we're going to say Bertrand with the first and Geis with the second. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll go to roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Yes.
Director Deschler?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Geis?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
All right. Now we are going to move to the public comment period. So this is the time for any of the members of the public who have comments about things that are not on our agenda today to make your comment. If you have comments about things that are on our agenda, we'll have separate public comment periods during that agenda item. Are there any general public comments today?
President Brandt, I have one from the public emailed in.
Okay. I'm not seeing any from the audience, any raised hands or anyone in the chat. All right, Jonathan, you can go ahead with the email comment.
Great, thank you. So this is from Peter Neuschel. The presentation from the Compost Collective confirmed this is a discriminatory program that serves only 96 houses out of 5,386. Nobody can enroll, and there are at least 60 houses on a waiting list going back to April 2020. That's an entire year of no growth whatsoever. Despite the demand, you gave back $10K of a $43K grant from a student government agency that exists to serve the Isla Vista community. Then that entity returned it and offered up more. One might ask, where did that $33K go during a year when the presentation acknowledges there was no service? The student organization ponying up the $43K from student fees and whatever the dean is overseeing this program needs to take a hard look. The Ivcsd is a services district. Either provide the service to everyone paying you or do not spend our tax dollars managing it and using your nonprofit status to bilk private donors and public agencies. The website says there's a yellow bin at Estero Park serviced by Marburg. I walk over there to check it out thinking, why not drop off food waste there? I see no bin. I called Marburg and they had no record of the bin. Apparently it is not for public use, even if it does exist. We pay for a park district whose land, shed, and other facilities are supposedly being used by the Compost Collective. Why isn't IVRPD handling this? They manage parks and gardens that presumably need compost. Your website remains full of inaccuracies that mislead taxpayers, including those like myself who start off genuinely interested in one of your purported services and then find out it's unavailable. On a positive note, I confirm that one of the houses on your list is receiving the service. They started in the fall, no waiting at all. Go figure. And just to clarify, factually, the service operated from July 2020 and still operates now. One of the comments was that the service hasn't operated, but has been using money.
Great, thank you for that comment, Mr. Nuschel. Are there any other comments from members of the public on general public comment? I do see a hand from Mark. Mark, you can go ahead now.
Thank you, Spencer. I was recently inspired to comment of how much I love the Ivy Compost Collective and the way that it's run through the Ivcsd. And so, yep, that's all I have to say. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments from members of the public on general public comment? Okay, with that, we're going to move along to the first item on our agenda, which is the presentation on alternatives to policing, and I'll hand it over to our staff to introduce this item.
I'm muted. Great, thank you. So I'm gonna get my share screen on. Give me a quick second. Okay, is that looking good for everyone? Okay, so this is the Alternatives to Policing Research Findings and Recommendations prepared by Ivcsd staff. Our interns, who are all here with us today, Sarah, Abigail, and Leah, worked very hard on this presentation and have been, since the start of their term as interns in February. So they've spent the last 2 months doing some of this research and preparing this information for us to consider today. And let's just get started with be presenting parts of this, and I'll be presenting the first half, and they'll be doing the second half. So I'll turn it over to them when it's the right time. But I'll want to actually ask them to unmute themselves and say hi and introduce themselves as part of the team presenting these presentations. So Sarah and Abigail and Leah, if you could just unmute and just introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a sophomore at UCSB and one of the interns.
Hi, I'm Leah. Sorry. I'm Leah. I'm a senior at UCSB and one of the public policy interns.
I'm Abigail. I'm a third year at UCSB and I'm also one of the public policy interns.
Thank you. Well, just a quick introduction of what this presentation is. It shows and outlines different kinds of non-police responses that exist in other communities. We looked across the country. Most of them are on the west coast of the United States, in California, or Oregon, or nearby states. There were 2 categories of programs that were looked into. One are ones that look at noise complaints and quality of life issues, and others that look at crisis intervention. Those are the 2 main categories that do exist that we've been able to identify, and also what the board was interested in our meetings back in September, October, and November. Why were we working on this? So just to inform the public, this is the Ivcsd's board goal for the 2021-2022 year. And the one that most specifically relates to this project is continue identifying, researching, and discussing public safety issues in Isla Vista and policy options to improve service delivery, and then begin implementation when possible. So this is one of the board's biggest priorities. We're also in the middle of our budget process. And so we're exploring as much as possible to know what we might want to support in the future. This is just another overview of past discussions that the board has had when we looked at the budget amendment following Resolution 9. And we also looked at preliminary information on armed responses and made the decision to keep moving forward with more research. Community feedback on this issue. We've had extensive feedback on the issue of policing and public safety at the district that we've compiled and shared with the board over the years. We had the town hall in 2017 that helped lead to the creation of the Ivcsd safety stations. We do our annual budget survey every year where we have several questions regarding safety in Isla Vista and about our programs themselves. And we also have a new public safety and policing survey on our website as part of our efforts last fall. And the link for it here is for anybody who wants to give input. It's a continuous survey, so people can continue to submit their information. So we look at this issue a lot, and so we have a lot of data from the public on what their sentiment is on policing. This is just a slide of our demographics in Isla Vista as part of context, since we in the next slide you'll see that we look at some demographic information on arrests and citations. Arrests and citations. So get the full data report here. Back in November and October of 2020, we did some Public Record Act requests from the SB Sheriff's Office to ask about arrest and citation data on many different scales. The full data report can be clicked through here for anybody interested in learning more about what we looked at then. But otherwise, we just pulled out some top level data that's going to help frame the rest of the presentation. So this is the data on arrests and citations in regard to race. This is the data on the actual arrests and citations themselves. And so we've looked at this before. You've all seen this chart. Again, the vast majority of the charges were for nonviolent issues that could be addressed in another way, is what we had discussed. So minor in possession being the biggest one, but also loud noise and music and open container, which are pretty similar offenses. Same with 2019, majority of the charges in Isla Vista were for minor in possession, open container, noise, music, public urination. So this was the basis of our exploration, is that knowing that this was what the majority of the issues that we were facing in the community that were being responded to with armed response. It's just a quick summary. We're a diverse place. There's a huge number of arrests and citations that are nonviolent. There is a high number of contacts with residents and law enforcement. And in terms of race, our Black residents make up 3.3% of the population, but they're arrested and cited at double the rate, at 6.8%, over double the rate. That's some of the information from the survey, or from the data, and some analysis that we provided. I'm not going to read this word for word, but the analysis is that there are a lot of nonviolent issues that are having an armed response to them that could cause unnecessary tension, unnecessary fear, and potentially use of force. And so what we would say is a goal would be to have an alternative response to these nonviolent issues, so that there could be less tension, less unnecessary citations, or use of force. So I'm going to now turn it over to our interns on research findings to talk about some existing programs, not an exhaustive list, but some existing programs here in Santa Barbara County that are happening, and then some other programs in other communities. So we're going to highlight those, and then we're going to come back to the staff recommendation and discussion. So get to Santa Barbara program. So take it away.
In Isla Vista, one of the projects that is currently being operated as a collaborative effort between the Isla Vista Community Services District and the UCPD are our Citations. The stations are staffed by community service officers and are present on Friday and Saturday nights in Isla Vista with water and hand washing stations, and provide CSOs to escort residents home and act as liaisons to law enforcement. The unarmed CSOs are trained and managed by UCPD and can be requested through the CSO dispatch line or by walking up to our safety stations. Community feedback about our stations is generally positive, but some locations are sometimes viewed as intimidating by residents who are unfamiliar with the program and think that there are police at the stations.
Santa Barbara has a mobile crisis response program that provides appropriate alternatives to hospitalization for those experiencing a psychiatric crisis or mental health emergency. They work in conjunction with the police department to respond to any situations they feel is necessary, where they can de-escalate or handle any mental health situations. Because they work with the police department, they are a program that is not really an alternative response, but that works in conjunction with the police department and show up always with an armed response. So as you'll see, we'll talk a little bit about other programs such as Cahoots that is sent out in place of an armed response, and that serves as more of an alternative, where this one works more in conjunction. And the community perception is mostly very good on this, but it is something that works with the police again, so there is always an armed response available.
Another existing project in Isla Vista is the Ivy Foot Patrol Party Registration, which is a voluntary program that provides an open line of communication between law enforcement and Isla Vista residents who are planning a party. This program operates under the Community Resource Deputy of the Ivy Foot Patrol and allows for the party hosts to regulate their party and remedy any issues that arise without police intervention by signing up for the program. This program also helps residents avoid fines associated with loud music citations and mitigate overall nuisance parties in Isla Vista. The program couldn't operate for a long time because of COVID and the pandemic, but it was successful and had a positive community perception.
Nonviolent response programs. There's only one under this, so.
So one of the nonviolent response programs that we researched is SNAP, which is the Student Neighborhood Assistance Program. And SNAP is operated under the San Luis Obispo Police Department and staffed by students from the local community college and university. The main functions of SNAP are to explain and educate all residents about San Luis Obispo's noise ordinance and the consequences of future noise complaints, and to be first responders to noise ordinance complaints. SNAP officers are dispatched through the central dispatch system for SLO PD and respond to noise complaints that are eligible for a warning, which in San Luis Obispo is residences that haven't had a complaint within a year or their leasing period. It's worth noting in relation to the community perception that the noise ordinance fine system in San Luis Obispo is different than in Isla Vista, and that landlords also face fines when tenants get violation tickets. So the perception just to being contacted about fines in general is a little bit more intense. SNAP officers serve the entire city of San Luis Obispo, which is around 40,000 residents. This is a city similar to Isla Vista, where it is very much centered around the local university and there's a large student population. There's a 4-month training period for SNAP officers before they are deployed to respond to calls, and SNAP officers do not issue citations to houses facing noise ordinance violations. Additionally, SNAP officers do not walk up to houses that they are not deployed to and only respond to calls to which they are dispatched. Linked in the presentation is the full report on SNAP, as well as the training manual from the program.
Okay, and then we're gonna go over crisis response programs, mainly Cahoots, but then some, highlights from the others.
Cahoots serves as our main mobile crisis intervention service that has a good guideline of how we can improve ours and SB Cares here. In the Eugene and Springfield County areas in Oregon, they serve working out of a nonprofit clinic that specializes in mental health. And it's a volunteer-based program. However, they do also have professional EMT and psychological services and staff for those who need it. So the program differs a little bit from SB Cares in that they refer you directly to the clinic. If they get called, they can call the police in certain scenarios, and they do list out if someone does call Cahoots where they will have to call the police. However, most reports come with just Cahoots responding, and when they do, they refer them to all their services, so no actual criminal charges are levied against these scenarios. This allows a more cooperative response where people feel a little bit safer because there's no armed weapons involved, and they can have a plan for improving after they get called, and different mental health resources that are offered.
It's a quick last overview on Cahoots, and then we'll go through the last ones quickly.
Safety for All is a recent initiative from the city of Berkeley. It is currently in its developmental phase, but it will result in a specialized care unit that is deployed to nonviolent 911 calls, especially mental health emergencies. And the overall goal is to make the public more comfortable calling in when there is an emergency.
STAR is a program through the Mental Health Center of Denver and the Denver Police Department, and they deploy teams consisting of a MHCD licensed clinician and a Denver paramedic. And Portland Street Response is a program that works in collaboration with the Portland Police Department and aims to provide a non-police response to assist people experiencing houselessness or behavioral mental health crises by deploying both a paramedic and a licensed social worker.
Here the Streets works in District of Columbia to try to fight gun violence in the area, and they have a special model that they developed and how to de-escalate situations. And they train certain actual officers and people who are part of the community to actually be dispatched and walking through the community and stopping any escalating situations they see. And Haste and Crit is very similar to SB Cares, where they are a ride-along program that goes with the sheriffs and police officers and their licensed level professional clinicians that come and evaluate any mental health scenes and try to help people by giving them further psychiatric help after.
And then thank you all. That was excellent. Thank you for presenting on your research. Based on all that information, and looking at the different kinds of programs and what they offer and what our board has discussed and put forward, our staff recommendation would be to direct us to keep working with the SNAP program operators to bring forward more information to the board and to continue considering moving forward with implementing a similar program in Isla Vista. So our interns have also been in touch with SNAP, and they are scheduled to come to a meeting in May if that's something that the board wanted to move forward with. So they're aware of our potential interest and are willing to work with us. So that's our recommendation, and we'd love to take some questions and comments.
Thank you, Jonathan, for the presentation, and thank you, Sarah, Abigail, and Leah, for your research into this project. I think that the findings are very informative and very fascinating for us to consider as a board. Thank you for the thoroughness. I want to open it up first to our board and ask if there's any clarifying questions to anything in the presentation first. Director Freeman.
So clarifying questions. I'm not certain if you have really thought through this during the analysis. So it might be that I'm asking us something that would be difficult to recover the knowledge of. But I know in some of these cases, these are programs that are being operated under a police department. And in some cases, these are programs that are being operated next to a police department. And that difference is more subtle necessarily than it might be initially thought. Because for example, in San Luis Obispo, the SNAP program, sorry, I've got a very loud siren which is passing. The program is being operated as a department underneath the police department, but the police department is itself a department of the city, which has a lot of control over the way the police operate. And so I'm wondering which of these programs have that kind of ability for the budgetary legislative people to have control over how the program operates in that sense as a city does, versus the scenario that I could imagine us running into here, where we allocate a bunch of money for the sheriff's department, who then does things that they want to do, and it becomes more difficult for us to ensure that it doesn't cause a depletion of some other part of the budget, or doesn't cause something that fits the exact statement of what we asked, but not the spirit of what we asked.
Yeah, that wasn't 100% part of the analysis. How exactly we're going to implement this. We still want to see, do we want to move forward with a program like this, learn more from SNAP, and just keep deciding. But our powers are what they are. So if that's something we want to move forward on, we'll need to see how we can make it work within our powers and however the board wants that to play out. And I'll just say that, we have a lot of, if we put out an RFP or, are negotiating a contract to get something like this done, I think we'll have a lot of leeway in saying how we want it to be implemented, since we'd be putting the money forward to implement it. But I don't know if we're, I don't know if we're there yet. Maybe it would be, if this is something we're interested in, we can keep exploring that more specifically, how exactly we implement, or we can talk about it today. But it's not something that was part of the analysis, is exactly how to implement yet.
Thank you. For what it's worth, that is my hope, that we would be able to have, due to the way that our contracts would work out, some good, reasonable ability to have some control. But it's, yeah.
Thank you for that question, Director Freeman. Any other questions on the presentation from board members? Director Deschler.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I wanted to ask, in the data, the analysis that you did when you were looking at the number of citations and that kind of thing, if there's a breakdown for resident versus non-resident?
Yeah, so if you go into the full report that's linked on page 7, then there is a good amount of data that we were able to collect of, affiliation. So we don't have the perfect amount of data, but for example, when they would write these citations, they collect the foot patrol or UCPD officers, they'd collect, which school that person went to. So for example, if you do open that report, it's called 2013, 2018, 2020 IVFP citation arrest data preliminary analysis. On page 4, it says employer school. And then so you can see there where some of the people who were arrested in 2013 came from. Majority of them went to UCSB or SBCC, but there's a solid chunk over the different years that aren't from here, or might live here but don't attend a school locally.
And then I wanted to ask a question, because there's quite a bit of a focus in this on mental health, mental health calls, and I just wondered, I thought that the Sheriff's Department did have, besides the behavioral health element, I thought that there was a program within the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department that accompanied a behavioral health specialist on calls. I don't think we've mentioned that program, or is that one and the same with the behavioral health program?
Yes, that's one and the same. And so
look at Ethan. Ethan's like, nah.
No, okay, Ethan, please clarify.
Yeah, they are two different programs. If I heard the Houston program correctly at the end, the co-response is similar to that, where it's a clinician that's embedded with law enforcement officers at both Santa Barbara Police Department in the city, the County of Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office, and then I think there's a team that's being built in conjunction with Lompoc or Santa Maria PD. And then the CARES is separate from that. And CARES still responds to calls that law enforcement agencies go to as well, but it's separate from the co-response.
Awesome. And then the last question I had, well, I have another question, but this question I want to ask, and I think Jonathan, you would know about this, is whether or not Santa Barbara City College, I thought there was some kind of neighborhood program associated with the west side of Santa Barbara and Santa Barbara City College.
Yes, there's supposed to be a SNAP program with the city of Santa Barbara, but we weren't able to make contact with them to get more information. So we reached out a few times with the city of Santa Barbara Public Information Officer's Office, which oversees SNAP, and didn't hear back.
Got it.
But I will tell you that I haven't seen information about the program in many years.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Bertrand.
Thank you. So first off, great job to Jonathan, Deborah, interns. Really glad that you were able to do this work. And thank you so much for bringing this forward. You explained it really well. As a follow-up to my last comments, I'll mention that when I looked at the presentation. I thought that the co-response was left out because that is still a response that involves armed police officers. So I thought that was the reason for the omission. But I think after this, since we are looking at a wide net of different types of existing services, we can definitely incorporate that in. I have a number of comments that I'll make after we hear from the public. But one question I have or request as we move forward is, so we have information about the arrests and citations that are made or issued each year. I also wonder if there's any data on the efficacy of enforcement of these low-level offenses, particularly around alcohol and drugs. And I don't know that we'll be able to measure that efficacy specific to UCSB or Isla Vista, but nationwide, when we're looking at these policies, especially laws for like underage drinking, I'd be interested to see if the enforcement of these policies with law enforcement officers has a benefit for creating healthier outcomes, or if that leads to no change in behavior, or if that leads to more people drinking inside or in areas that are maybe out of the public eye, and if that leads to people being less likely to call for help when they need it. I think you see where I'm going with this. What's the impact on healthy outcomes that the enforcement of these low-level offenses has in communities like ours? So perhaps there's some study out there. Perhaps we have to talk to some scholars at UCSB to look into that question if there isn't already, but I'd be curious.
Thank you for that, Ethan. That's a great question for us to research in the future. Any other questions from members of the board? Director Deschler?
Yeah, I thought it might be helpful, probably the only one who doesn't know this, but what happens with someone when they get cited by law enforcement for a minor in possession or having an open container? Like, what is the process? Do they get a ticket? If someone could just explain that, I'd appreciate it. Maybe Deputy Schroeder.
Sure, I could take that one if you guys like. There's a number of different options that can happen. You kind of have to go offense by offense. So a minor in possession is somebody under 21 with alcohol. They'll go down to the courthouse and they'll be offered a diversion program like Zona Seca. They'll teach them about, alcohol related topics, things like that. And then the ticket generally goes away after they complete the class and maybe some community service. They can also just choose to pay a fine and take care of the citation that way. Open container, same thing. They can go down to the court, they can fight it, they can pay a fine, they can do community service, or I have that restorative justice program out there that the offenders are offered. And so they come, we do an hour plus or minus class, and then they do community service out there in Isla Vista. And then their citation just goes away completely. It's not on their record in any way, shape, or form. Noise ordinances are handled the same way as the open containers. So those are kind of the routes that they go. They can pay a fine in court, or they can choose one of these programs.
Thank you. That's super helpful.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I figure now would be a good time to open up public comment. We want to hear from the public. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns on alternatives to policing in Isla Vista. Okay, I see one from Andrew Johnson, so I'll have Andrew go first to be followed by Mark Vuksevich. Go ahead.
Hey, yeah, thanks for this really great research. And the big thing that I would want to say is that I am firmly opposed to Ivy Community Service District paying the police to just create a fake police organization that goes around and provides warnings to people. I know that that is something that is perhaps still being discussed, and I hope that you take all authority from the Isla Vista Foot Patrol out of that organization, because the SNAPS program as it's put together in SLO does not meet our community needs. And then I guess I had a question about the research behind this. I was curious why there wasn't any research done on transformative justice organizations that focus on sexual violence. And then I guess the other question I had was, there was a fair amount of conversation about trying to collaborate with the police or trying to do this in cooperation with the police, but very little about trying to cooperate with members of the community. And I'm kind of curious what sort of perspectives were asked of by various community organizations that are working on issues, particularly around trying to get cops off campus or to reduce the police footprint within Isla Vista. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Andrew. Next, I'll go to Mark Vucevic. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Spencer. I guess like some of my initial reactions are, yeah, and I think this is to Director Deschler's kind of point. I don't know if it's fully is, but like I would love to know and understand some of the previous like policing strategies that have been used. Like what was the policing strategy that Lieutenant Camarena came in with for approach, like the approach to, you know, uniformed officers in Isla Vista versus the previous lieutenant versus the current lieutenant? Like what is the actual, you know, I think people know this, I'm in the military. So like, what is the actual like tactical way that officers are used and thought of to actually get the greatest outcomes? And so I feel like I was missing that a little bit, and I'd love to hear more about that in the future. But I think that is a little bit outside of the scope of what we asked Jonathan and all the lovely interns. But I just wanted to like say that I feel like I want to hear more about that. Another thing I want to mention is that I actually I've recently done a lot of research into the Eugene, Oregon example, which I think is really, really fantastic. And I think that sort of example would change policing in many, many cities around the world and around the country, excuse me. And I actually don't think it's like the most prescient issue in Isla Vista. To me, I mean, to me, this is just like my citizen view of policing in Isla Vista is like, you know, why are police bothering, you know, students who are walking home inebriated? You know what I mean? Like that, to me, that's like the bigger issue here, as opposed to like, you know, doing investigatory work or actual like preventative, you know, policing, or when, you know, there are people catcalling women down the street, actually like being there to be a protective, you know, source, rather than just like, yeah, what I would call harassing people who are inebriated. And so to me, like, that's the bigger issue that I don't think like as something as lovely as the Eugene, Oregon example is, I don't think actually like solves or addresses that particular example. One other thing I'll say is that I've like, yeah, very recently done a lot of like criminal justice work. And I think like getting a criminal justice scholar would be very useful for a lot of this stuff, because it's just like, it's a lot to take in. And even like, despite all of the fantastic, great work that was just presented. And then the very, very last thing I swear is that, you know, it's not even that great of a point, but it feels like that we are trying to like make the best out of a shit situation. Like we are the only country in most of the developed world that actually doesn't let you like drink in public, or doesn't let you be intoxicated on the street. Like that is a criminalized act in our country, and it's not anywhere else. And it feels like we are working around this crappy system that we exist in. And I guess that's what we are doing in my opinion. But like, to me, that's fundamentally like the issue, is that we have the ability to target people when they're at their most vulnerable with the police. Anyways, that's it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mark, for your comments. Next, I see we have Ash. Go ahead, Ash.
Hello. Thank you so much for addressing this topic. Some thoughts that I wanted to share are, I think it would be best to work on alternative programs that don't involve the police, in terms of like it adding to the police powers to oversee it or adding to their budget. I'm interested in maybe seeing if the CSD can talk to people that are doing organization around abolition work. A few orgs that come to mind are Cops Off Campus, Surge, and El Centro. And there's probably some other great ones as well. I wonder if they have things to share or, yeah, I feel like something important to remember is that a lot of times what the current police and criminal justice system offers is like when it comes to harm in the community, when harm happens, it's more of like a response than a prevention. And so I feel like a bystander intervention program could be really good. My friend told me this idea and I've been trying to spread it around, that we pay people to like be sober and go out on party nights. This would be like post-COVID, obviously. And have them be trained in bystander intervention when it comes to like preventing sexual harassment or assault and helping people take care of themselves if they're drunk or something, which some might say, oh, that's kind of what CSOs do, but not everybody feels comfortable with CSOs. Some people feel like they're just, you know, cops with a nicer face on it. So I feel like a real community-led bystander intervention program. Yeah, and thanks for addressing this really important issue. I really appreciate that. And check.
Thank you for your comments, Ash. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to speak on this item?
Spencer, just real quick, Deputy Schroeder, if I could say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to offer to the board, I know I have before, but to the public who's on the meeting, the Foot Patrol offers walk-alongs anytime. We usually do them on Friday and Saturday night. So if people want to come and get the fullest transparency view of the Isla Vista Foot Patrol, we are happy to have people. So come on into the Foot Patrol station. I have the form to fill out and we'd love to get you guys out with us.
Thank you for those comments, Justin. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna bring it back to the board for some discussion. Any board members have something they'd like to share? Director Freeman and then Director Geis.
Yes, thank you. So I want to say that the comments from Andrew and Ash and Mark all resonate with me very strongly. These are things that I think about a lot. And it often puts me in a really conflicted place coming into these discussions of trying to figure out how to use the Isla Vista Community Service District's power in order to transform an organization that many people find to in some sense be almost specifically the problem. It's something that I end up finding myself extra emotional about sometimes, even during these meetings recently, in that I've been doing meeting recording for the Ivcsd council meetings, which actually overlap with this meeting. And so I'm constantly reminded of the little screen down here of the discussions that are going on around Angelo Quinto, family member of one of our friends who was killed by police. And I mean, in a situation that is very similar to the kinds of things that we're discussing. And so the problem that I run into is that our power at the Isla Vista Community Service District is to contract for additional police protection services to supplement the level of police protection services already provided, which in some sense is exactly not what everyone wants right now. That is like the zeitgeist of the topic of what all of these organizations have been trying to figure out how to do, is to try to figure out how to peel away and remove police protection services and to try to figure out how to work with external organizations. And Now we can interpret in some sense, not and adjust what we were saying with police protection services and alternatives to police protection services. Maybe we can count those. But we then run into problems with who we're allowed to contract with. And so thankfully, it's not that we're required to contract with the sheriff's department or with UCPD. We can contract with the county and with the regents of the University of California. But these are organizations that oftentimes take those requests and immediately turn them back around to, oh, you're working on a police issue. We don't really exactly have that jurisdiction. You should be working with the sheriff's department. Oh, we have that all handled through UCPD. And so I find myself in this really torn position of trying to figure out how to, and I know this wasn't the topic that Mark was bringing this up for, but the statement is the same, trying to figure out how to make the best out of a shit situation, of trying to figure out how to take what we're doing with police and transform it in the scope of what we are allowed to do as the power of our district. And that's where I'm really sympathetic towards these alternative programs that are built out of the police department, even though it involves giving more money to police in order to train more police agents, because the agents that they send out, they, as it was stated earlier, cops with a nicer face, but cops with a nicer face that aren't also carrying a lethal weapon. And to the extent to which I can figure out how to remove some of the lethal weapons from the frontline responders of people who are being sent out on these response calls, that might help save lives, and that might help. That might be an okay step to take. And so that's why all of the thoughts, and I agree with them so strongly, honestly, in many ways. The thoughts that come from Andrew, Ash, and Mark, they resonate with me so deeply, and yet I'm supportive of this idea of, well, let's at least get the SNAP people to come here and give us a presentation and see the extent to which we can use their ideas to help. And we need to be really careful, I think, about how we give money to the police department and how we use the contracts that we have in order to try to limit what they end up doing with it. I think we need to be careful about about what ends up happening with the budget later, and the extent that this doesn't end up becoming some kind of expansion of something else. But I'm not yet at the point where I want to try to throw wrenches in the works of some of this stuff, as much as sometimes it feels like that's the more like end goal thought. And for what it's worth, that is my end goal. I mean, I would love to, even escapes the extent to which it's not something that the Ivcsd, within its power and within its trade-offs that it has to perform, is in the best position to try to take. I certainly want to bring us to a position where we can minimize the amount of police force, where we can change the laws that are even causing some of these issues to now actually finally respond to Mark's point, that are cases where we've kind of created a problem and then are solving it with police. To change the laws, to change the organizations, to change the entire conversation and structure. But for right now, what I can do in the next couple of months with the powers in this district, I'm excited about the discussions we've been having. So.
Thank you, Director Freeman. Director Geis, you're up next.
You're muted, Bob. Hey, Bob, you're still muted.
Okay, let's start again. We have all these issues of minors in possession and other alcohol problems in Isla Vista that are enforced by the sheriff. But what happens on the UCSB campus, and how does UCSB handle those similar issues? Because, I remember when I was in college, the drinking age was different in Ohio, but we drank in the dorms, and we drank when we were out of the dorms. And I never in my whole college career in 4 years ran into a uniformed officer carrying a lethal weapon in all my years of college. It just didn't exist on the in my realm on the Ohio State campus. And that we had 50,000 students coming to that. And I don't know if it was just a more tolerated environment is because the drinking age was lower. But you know, the lower drinking age and when I was in college was just for 3-2 beer until you got to be 21. But you know, we surely had all the ways to get alcohol that other people do. So I just don't get what's happening on campus compared to what's happening when people get out into the Isla Vista area.
Oh, golly, I cannot speak for the police, but I want to say I would be extremely surprised if people are drinking in the dorms on campus. I'm pretty dang positive they're not supposed to do that, but I am texting my police chief right now.
Well, Kirsten, I know they're not supposed to do it, but I'll guarantee you that they do it. I don't know what happens when they get caught, but.
Yeah. And I know we have a couple of folks from UCPD on the line, not to put you on the spot, but if you do, I see Ariel, your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Corporal Ariel Bournet, UCSB Police Department. It's a really great question. And your perception is not off as far as it's a different culture on campus versus in Isla Vista. So that was an astute observation, you know, and to be honest, I would love to say it's because we have an amazing police department that has figured this out, but it would really be taking credit away from the tons of resources that the university puts towards addressing these issues and to all of your points without an armed response. So the alcohol and drug program does a ton of outreach and education. Life of the Party does outreach and education. Gaucho FYI, before students even come to school, they're given information on how to interact with alcohol in a college environment. And then I definitely don't want to take away from our lovely RAs and RDs who do the frontline work of addressing alcohol on campus. They deal with it infinitely more than we do with the student population. And that's something that is, you know, kind of a benefit of UCSB having its own housing, which not every college or university has that, you know, option. So a lot goes into it that prevents it from becoming a problem on campus. It is, I worked campus patrol for several years. It is pretty rare for us to be dealing with open containers, you know, on campus outside of a dorm. Usually they are dealt with by the RAs and RDs. And I believe me, if you brought in someone from housing, I'm sure they would give you a much more robust answer on how that's dealt with on the day-to-day basis. So I do know from living in the dorms myself, it does come up as an issue inside the dorm, but more or less, it usually doesn't spill out onto campus outside of the dorms. And like I said, our housing staff does an amazing job of dealing with it. And some of you guys know when they are caught with alcohol, there are programs that they're given, educational programs they're given within UCSB to address those issues that the police are not involved with. So, you know, I understand that we may not be able to apply all of these things in Isla Vista or even most of these things, but I do think from having some of those resources in here, like alcohol and drug program, and talking to them and like housing, we can really learn from them moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Ariel. That's very informative and a good question by you, Director Deschler, as well. Any other comments from members of the board? I'll go Director Aguilar and then Director Bertrand.
Awesome. First of all, I just want to thank the public for giving critical thought and attending this meeting. It really matters to have input from a breadth of voices much wider than us on the board. One voice I want to bring forward that I've had the pleasure of knowing is my landlord. His name is Ron. He he first came to Isla Vista as a young person looking for fun, partying, all that good stuff back in the mid to late 60s and traveled around. And he's told me plenty of great stories of good times. But one of the important factors of that older idyllic Isla Vista is that there was not alcohol sale in the township anywhere in the little biking walkable distance. And then there came a point after the whole 60s revolution, psychedelic drugs, all that stuff, in which that became a much less popular way for young people to expand their minds. And instead, alcohol was flooded into Isla Vista. And I think with alcohol, we see one of these main policing issues, which is interpersonal violence. The other side of this coin with policing is the police themselves being viewed as a threat by many citizens. And so these are the two kind of main meaty topics here, is that if we get rid of police altogether, then we're kind of leaving some people who are in weak or meek positions at the hands of possibly some dangerous Isla Vista citizens and residents or visitors and guests. We don't want that. But we also don't want people to feel threatened. I grew up in a community with plenty of like policing issues back in Fresno, California, and seeing police and seeing the negative side effects of policing, as well as the need to have policing due to things like heavy gang violence, has just been a part of my life growing up. But it's very much a shocking reality for many students when they come to Ivy and seeing that this is a heavily policed area. And that can be very threatening to be walking down the street, feeling a little buzzed, trying to make your way home, and an officer could be possibly having a bad evening and tells you in a barking voice to get home, and they have a gun, and that can be very scary. We don't want that for our citizens, especially our youngest residents who are at 17, 18, etc. I think we have to focus on trying to separate those 2 points that I outlined at the beginning, though, which is interpersonal violence, citizen to citizen, neighbor to neighbor here in Ivy, and then also the fact that some of us as citizens feel threatened directly by the police. And I don't know if I want to second what Jay was speaking on earlier, but I don't know if we have the power, like the authority to, get rid of policing contracts. And I think it's good that we continue this conversation to explore with SNAP and explore what is possible right now in the moment, because we are in a shit situation. But I don't want to be unthankful for the people who have chosen to serve our community as police officers. They did so for a reason. They have ambitions to see our community get better, just like I do when I sign up for this job. Theirs is a lot more every day, 24/7. I'm not usually like a big police apologist, but I do understand service work. And I understand that service is one of the main verbs when you take the oath to be a police officer. So I want to, really remind everyone here that there's plenty to look at with policing structure and to form this ball of clay into something we want here in IV without having to just throw all of the clay out altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Aguilar. Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Well, I want to thank all of my colleagues for the great discussion tonight. We're really starting this meeting off with one of the most challenging topics we could discuss, but I also know that this issue is one of the reasons that several of us are in this work and are still doing this years later from when we started. Policing has changed a lot since when I moved to Isla Vista, when some of you moved to Isla Vista, or when some of you were already here. Back around 2014, 2015, in the aftermath of a tumultuous year, we were in a very dark moment where saturation patrols were the tactic, the strategy to answer Mark's question from before. That was what was described by university administrators, by law enforcement agencies. And what that looked like was anytime you walked outside of your house and stood outside for a little while on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, you will see a police car drive by or police officers walk by looking for low-level offenses that theoretically could escalate to other issues. That was the thought. It was very much a broken windows type of policing, which I know many of us on this board have expressed significant problems with, and many academics and researchers have found real problems with, where the thought is if you focus on aggressively handling low-level offenses, that will make the community safer. But I think what we see today in Isla Vista and in communities around the nation is that no, while that may temporarily put a Band-Aid on some of those low-level issues, it also creates a whole host of issues with trust between law enforcement and the community. issues with equity, and overall safety. But that being said, we have seen some movement since 2014 and 2015. There have been some good efforts to move away from the type of saturation patrols that we were seeing back then. There have been efforts to create some starting diversion programs like the restorative justice program that was discussed before. On Halloween and Deltopia, we are seeing some reduction in the numbers of law enforcement officers that are deployed to the community. These are all good movements, but still in a lot of ways, we find ourselves in the position that we were when we were talking about creating this district, which is that too many of our friends, too many of our neighbors are stopped for low-level offenses. And as some of us have said tonight, feel scared, feel unsafe. This is especially true for people of color, for women, for members of our LGBT community. And that's why I really see this as an urgent responsibility that we have. That's why I am supportive of taking a next step to explore the SNAP program, because as I believe Director Freeman said, it is an alternative to having an armed response for certain offenses, and that's a step in the right direction. But I do want to underscore just how real this safety issue is when we have armed law enforcement officers responding to issues that are nonviolent in nature. This isn't just problematic for the community member, it's not a good position for the law enforcement officer either, because this can escalate unnecessarily. In my time in Isla Vista, I have seen from friends, acquaintances, neighbors, a lot of direct consequences from this type of policing. This ranges from sexual harassment to people being unnecessarily roughhoused during these interactions, to community members sitting on a curb with two officers standing over them with their guns on, with their hands on their guns. And while some of this is just what is routine police work over the decades, and some of it is just training and focus on officer safety, which obviously we need to be concerned about, it still is painful for the community member, and it strips away the dignity of the community member. Some may say that it's taking away from their humanity, and it really creates an unsafe situation in Isla Vista. I definitely agree with what Director Freeman said before about it's easy to get emotional about these issues. I find myself going in that direction often, but really coming at this from a place of care and love for this community. I want our residents to be safe. I want them to feel safe when they do have to call for help in an emergency, or when they are walking down the street with a friend who's not in the best shape. I don't want them to have to worry about somehow being perceived as a threat and a violent interaction happening, or them being disrespected in some way. So all of that being said, I am glad we're moving in this direction of exploring options for unarmed response for these offenses that inherently do not require or should not require an armed law enforcement officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Any other comments from board members? Director Flaherty.
Yes, thank you everyone for all your comments so far. I've really been listening a lot to all the community members' comments as well as the boards, and I really appreciate the perspective that everyone's bringing to this. We could be talking about this for so much longer, and there's so many things to talk about, and so I really appreciate that this is not the beginning, because I know this has been a continuing conversation, but I'm happy that we're discussing this again. I personally am really excited to hear if the board votes to hear from the SNAP people. And I think this could be a really useful program. I agree with a lot of the sentiments that Director Aguilar said. And I know that I'm looking at the SNAP skeleton right here, and how it mentions that students must be enrolled in Cal Poly Slow Request to College. I know that the data says that a lot of the non-violent, like citations, are UCSB and SBCC. So I'd be really interested in involving both communities in this. And that's an exciting opportunity for me, so that we do have those non-armed responses for the non-violent offenses. So I am excited about these next steps should we vote on this. And I would just like to thank everyone again for their comments.
Thank you, Director Flaherty. Director Deschler, do you have a comment?
I do, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So first of all, I definitely want to thank everyone for their comments. I really appreciated some of the comments that Jay mentioned. Marcos really resonated with me. And I also appreciated, I think Mark and Ash and Andrew made some interesting comments that I appreciated as well. And I think that as we talk about next steps, some of what I'm going to say are kind of questions because I'm not sure the answer. So it seems to me that in some cases there's kind of two parallel tracks here. One is we're focused on policing in general and policing in Isla Vista. And on the other hand, we're talking about some of these specific offenses that are happening, the minor in possession, the underage drinking and that kind of thing. And I think that something that Jay said made sense to me is that when we're talking about policing in general, Ivcsd, my understanding, doesn't have the authority to take on policing in Isla Vista. So we're not talking about replacing IV Foot Patrol and taking on that role, right? So whatever we implement needs to be something that, unless we take over IV Foot Patrol's jurisdiction, it has to be something that works with IV Foot Patrol. And if that's the case, then I think that there should be some meaningful engagement with IV Foot Patrol and perhaps with UCSB, although that's something else, to talk about what does a community in program look like that is addressing the issues that I think was in the report that we just saw, which is these three top offenses. So there's the cultural issues, and then there's also these three top issues that are getting the most attention by police. And so I know what the staff is recommending that we move to learn more about SNAP. And I would say, I think there's a step before that. And I think somebody mentioned talking to criminal justice scholars, getting information on some other approaches in our community would be helpful before we meet with SNAP, or in addition to meeting with SNAP, like maybe it's more of a roundtable conversation that we have. But I really think that if the Ivcsd is not taking over police services in Isla Vista, then we need to engage the people that do provide police services, understand what they do, what they don't do, and work with them in the devising of a new program that is for these low-level offenses. So I hope it's okay that I said all that. I'll get a quick call if it's not. But so anyways, that's all what I appreciated the comments from Marcos and Catherine and others and Jay. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for those comments, Director Deschler. I think very apt. And I think I'll close out by just saying, I think I've already mentioned this, but I'm really just impressed with the presentation, how thorough everything was, and how good of an overview that this was, because these are very complex issues that we're dealing with today. And they do deal with a number of different things. They deal with quality of life, they deal with behavioral health issues, and they also deal with the way that policing can escalate in our community and have the opposite effect and create less safety rather than what we all clearly want, which is we all want to live in a safe community. When I first came to Isla Vista, one of the things that someone who was older and who had lived in the community for a number of years told me as sort of a orientation, quote unquote, was the one thing I need to know is don't sit on the curb. Because if I sat on the curb, I was going to be cited or possibly arrested. And now it feels almost full circle because I've now lived here for about 5, almost 6 years. And I'm having similar conversations, or thinking about how I have similar conversations with my younger brother who's going to come and live in our community. And I'm wondering, is this advice that I need to share with him? And I kind of think that, unfortunately, the answer is still yes. In a lot of ways, as Director Bertrand mentioned, we have moved and on, and many in law enforcement and our justice system have changed, a significant amount since I first came to live here. But in many ways, there are a lot of things that are still the same. And one thing that has changed is our community is more diverse now than it ever has been in history. Our educational institutions and our student bodies that live in Isla Vista, whether they are college students or elementary school students and their family, they represent more diversity than we have ever had in our community. And when I see some of the statistics about how our policing strategies are affecting some of these populations, I am very concerned. I see that Black people in particular are twice as represented in the arrest and citation data than their share of the population. And I'm not content with that. I don't think that that's acceptable. I don't think that that is serving our goal of all living in a safer community. As far as these programs go, I appreciate a lot of the comments that directors have made about trying to figure out what our district's role is. Because in many ways, we are a government agency like no other. We do not control the municipal law enforcement agencies that serve our community. We do have the power to institute these augmentations, though, these augmentation programs for law enforcement and as a part of running other community facilities as well, which I think once you start to talk about medical response and co-response, there is a little bit of overlap there. But I think that I'm very supportive of moving forward to get a better idea of what some of these programs could look like in Isla Vista. And I also want to acknowledge that this conversation is not even necessarily new. Jonathan has mentioned that we have conducted outreach on public safety in Isla Vista since the day that our district was created in March of 2017. And additionally, even long before that, our community has been talking about specifically the SNAP program in San Luis Obispo and how it could potentially be, there are lessons learned there that we could implement in our community to better address some of these quality of life issues in a targeted way, in a way that makes our community feel dignified and respected, and like they're a part of the solution making the community a better place. And additionally, I'm just very, it's been really fascinating to see the growth and the support that the highest levels of government are giving to these behavioral health and mental health co-response teams. In the federal stimulus package that passed in March, there was included something called the Cahoots Act, which specifically allocates millions of dollars for these non-law enforcement sort of clinician response to behavioral and mental health issues. And this isn't sort of a radical lefty idea. This is being embraced by police chiefs across Santa Barbara County. In the city of Lompoc, the police chief has embraced the Cahoots program idea, and they are working on implementing something like this in their community. And so I think that there, in the body of research that we have been presented to tonight, there are a lot of the seeds for programs, for solutions that we can plant here in Isla Vista that can grow into something that makes our community better. And I like the suggestion by Director Deschler as well, that we should not just limit it to what has already been done and the research we've acquired of programs, but we should consult our scholarship too, because I think those are really good questions that have been posed tonight about sort of the nature of not just how we do law enforcement, but how we deem certain acts as things that must be policed, and how we target resources towards those that are in trouble and that are having mental and behavioral health issues. So again, I just really want to thank everyone in the public for being here tonight and hearing the presentation and being a part of the discussion, because I think that's the kind of engagement that really is at the heart of any of these programs that we've talked about here tonight. Any other comments from board members? Or if the discussion is over, I'm happy to entertain a motion as well.
I have a question, Kirsten. So the SNAP program in San Luis Obispo operates under the authority of the police department, and the police department runs that program. Is that correct?
Yes, they have a neighborhood engagement position that oversees SNAP.
That's an employee of the police department?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Director Freeman, I see your hand.
So I don't know if anyone would even have anything that they'd want to be adding, but I've always felt that when you have a relatively friendly audience and we have one of these rather tense subjects where the people on the board have now spent a lot of time finally providing their opinion, whereas the public only got to respond to the issue before we were able to actually provide any of our thoughts, that it might be nice to go back to the audience. But I appreciate it. I believe it's we've got it politicized as your discretion on that stuff.
No, Director Freeman, I think that's a great discussion. I'm also seeing comments from members of the chat of people saying that they have more comments. So I'm very willing with the consensus of the board, which I'm seeing some nods to open up public comment. I'll ask that we try to limit discussion as much as possible because we do have other items on our agenda and there may be others here for other items. But if you do have some follow-up comments, feel free to hit the raise hand button or put something in the chat. Mark, I see your hand. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so just like sitting here thinking about this and hearing the discussion, like two, different, but I think substantive ideas that like come to mind for me that I think would make people like really feel safer is, and I hope I'm not being too direct here, but I'm not politically elected, so I feel like I can say this, is put some UCPD officers and some sheriff's deputies in front of the frat houses saying, if you feel unsafe, come outside and grab me. Like I think that's a way to target a sexual assault and a sexual harassment issue in our community. And on a similar vein, if we have this, I think it's through Ivcsd, but it might be through the IV Foot Patrol. There's the way to register parties and register your party. And like if party registration come along with allowing a CSO or allowing a green dot representative to come into your party. And green dot, if anyone's not familiar, is where people wear a big green dot on their shirt. And it means that and that is an indicator for if I am if I'm in trouble or if there is a person that's like sexually harassing me or assaulting me, I can go find a green dot representative who will be my partner and my safe person in that moment to get me out of that situation. And so I feel like that would be a great way to have like eyes in a place that needs it, because I think sexual assault is to me the most pressing issue that we have in our community, not the alcohol issue. And to me, like that's the way to like make our community safer, not necessarily like changing the party culture that we have here, which I think like has its lovely parts. I think it's fun and it has its cons, but like that's the way to mitigate the cons. And that's just like my wacky, just sitting here for 15-minute two ideas. Thank you for reopening public comment.
Thank you for those comments, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Okay, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat. Oh, I do see a hand from Ash. Go ahead, Ash.
Okay, thank you. I feel like Yeah, one thing I'm thinking about is like the nonviolent citations where like no one's being harmed. Can we just try to like move away from that instead of having like an unarmed person be doing that disciplining, like and focus on the things where people are harmed, and more proactive ways to deal with that. I know more education about people's right to consent is happening, so I wonder if we can support and continue that. And then the bystander intervention, like the green dots. But then yeah, like just having a different group of people doing the disciplining for being drunk in public. I wonder if it's possible to try to have that be a thing of the past, when it's not correlated with actual harm. Check.
Thank you for that comment, Ash. And I see a stack from Andrew Johnson. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I feel like that there's a lot of great work to be done on trying to find different ways to improve the system. And I think that this conversation sort of tries to push that forward. But there's always this contradiction about what the Ivcsd can do without having to rely upon police. And, you know, I'm gonna have to come to one of these meetings tomorrow to complain about budget that y'all are gonna be sending for police as well. And you know what? I support efforts to try to take sexual violence within our community really, really seriously. And I understand why y'all are gonna have to approve that budget item. But I think that just philosophically, as y'all are debating this issue, as y'all are wanting to listen to what SNAP has to say, or y'all are trying to push the bounds of what Ivcsd can do, I just really want to stress that police are not solutions to our social problems. And you know, Mark made a really great comment earlier about how we're sort of trying to build stuff, but we're ignoring the fundamental issues. And I think that one of the big fundamental issues is trying to find ways to disempower and to limit the presence of the foot patrol within Isla Vista, and to do it with other sorts of community organizations that meet these challenges a lot better than some dude with a gun who has the ability to threaten the use of violence so as to get you to comply. And so I don't know what the solutions that y'all are going to be considering, both in the short term and the long term, but I do think there has to be a wrestling with the sort of institutional power of what the Ivcsd can do, and that, you know, the problems to Isla Vista can't just be like, okay, well, let's just cooperate with the police to find some sort of police supplement to be able to like meet this like really small need of like, you know, the fact that people party in Isla Vista. And I guess that's all I'm gonna have to say is, and I will end my comments, but I appreciate sharing space with y'all. Peace.
Thank you for those comments, Andrew. And thank you to everyone who spoke. Again, there's I think it's just indicative of how much passion and energy there is on this very important question. And I'm glad that we could provide space to discuss it today. I kind of want to wrap up the discussion. I don't know if any board members have final thoughts, or if not, I would entertain a motion. I see a hand from Director Bertrand. Go ahead.
Final thoughts on motion, which I agree with what Kirsten said before about working with existing stakeholders. And what I would add on that is, I know myself and President Brandt met with Chief Yao when he came into office, and he very generously set up a meeting with us right away. And we discussed this type of program. And I think this type of program could build well off of our existing partnership with UCPD. So looking forward to having discussions with UCPD and other agencies. And then just on the larger issue, what I'll say is I find myself really wrestling with these issues because I've had very good experiences and I've had very, very bad experiences. And like there are some experiences I've had with law enforcement officers in this community or things that I've seen where I've seen selfless dedication, life-saving work to help heal very challenging times in this community. But I've also seen misconduct, violence, things that have been very bad. And I don't know that we can wrestle with all of that in this board, in this meeting. But what I do know is that there are some things that I think we believe should not be the responsibility of the police as the first response, such as issues that are really health and social issues or quality of life issues. And I think that's what we're trying to address with this type of initiative. And I'm sure we'll engage on these wider issues and see best practices in other communities and work collaboratively with everyone. But I just want to mention that. And I appreciate that we can have these honest discussions. And again, from a place of care. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand.
I think Ethan said he was also going to make a motion.
Sure. I'll move to direct staff to schedule a further presentation to the board from SNAP program operators in order for the board to fully consider whether to move forward with implementing a similar program in Isla Vista in the near future, as written in the staff report.
And I will second that motion and add one comment that I feel like that the weird conflict that we end up having might be able to be resolved at some point in the future as the Isla Vista Community Service District gains reputation and maybe could eventually take on becoming a city, in which case we could finally actually tackle these things head on. So.
All right, we have a motion from Bertrand, seconded by Freeman. Is there any board discussion on the motion? Director Deschler.
Yeah, my only comment is, and maybe this is embodied in the motion, but I would like to explore or get additional consultation from others, and so that we're not just hearing about the SNAP program and then automatically going into a decision, but that it's more of an iterative process and we hear from other entities.
Great point. I'd like to amend my motion to change it to be the direct staff to meet with stakeholders and schedule a further presentation, etc.
I think that's friendly. I verify we're the presentation, like we're asking for presentations, then come back to the board and we're able to then look through all the information and make decisions on what happens. And that was still the intent. Yeah.
Okay, new motion or amended motion. Any other comments from board members? Okay, well then with that, I think we'll take it to a vote. Jonathan, can you do a roll call?
Yes, Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Director Deschler?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Geis? Director Aguilar? Oh.
Yes.
And Director...
It's a yes from Geis.
Thank you. Director Freeman?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thanks again, everyone, for coming today and having such an honest and robust discussion on this issue. And I know we'll trust that we'll all be back together to discuss it in the near future. Okay, we're going to move to item 4.2, and this is recommendations from the Staff Pay and Benefits Committee. I want to hand it over to Jonathan if you want to introduce the recommendations in the report.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of big decisions and discussions today. This is the second of them. This has been a lot of work. We've been working on this also for over 2 months now. Since the retreat, we've had a committee working hard. Deborah's been doing all the legwork, so I'm going to turn it over to her to present the recommendation, the summary, and the background, and then we can discuss some more. But Deborah, do you want to just go over this?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, board members. And I want to thank our ad hoc committee before I launch into the presentation of this report. You all got the agenda report in the attachment that we sent out. Jonathan is sharing that now. Thank you, Jonathan. Our subject is our objective, which is to establish a compensation and benefit schedule that will attract and retain staff. We are still working to accomplish that. We think we've made some really good progress. Our objectives would entail establishing new salary ranges, and we've outlined those in our recommendation in Exhibit A. We are also looking at new benefits or establishing a more robust benefit program, and that's outlined in Exhibit B, which we'll look at. And then lastly, we're looking at a retirement package, which is outlined in Exhibit C. So those are our three key elements for our compensation and benefits program for current and new staff that we want to bring on board. The board has been working on all of these issues. Our ad hoc committee has been working on all of these issues. The first thing that, again, we looked to identify was appropriate pay, regular pay for our staff. And we found that we would need to recommend some new salary ranges for our general manager and our assistant general manager, our current staff. So you'll see those outlined in the attachments also. We did discuss at length retirement options. We did decide on a 457 type of retirement plan, and this is a defined benefit plan that allows for the district to contribute to employees' retirement fund and for employees to contribute to a retirement fund. We haven't yet decided on a vendor, but I will continue to look at that and we'll present that information to the board. We did also decide in regards to, or the board is, our ad hoc committee, I keep saying our board, our ad hoc committee, also looked at retirement issues, and in regards to that we have, the 457 is in response to the retirement issues. We also looked at health benefits, which would include our health, dental, and vision benefits. And we want to look at coverage for immediately for our full-time employees and for our part-time employees. And we are working with GSRMA, a vendor, to help us design a program or a package for those benefits to our employees that would be most cost-effective for us and beneficial to them. One of the other things that the ad hoc committee was tasked to look at was housing or residency supplemental pay, possibly. Again, to attract and retain people that are willing to work and live in the Isla Vista community area. So as you know, the background for this really came about by our initial participation in the California Special Districts Association salary survey, which will be conducted on a regular basis and available to us on a regular basis. But we found that by participating in that, our current staff is paid much less than is found for standard throughout those, or the averages found with those 16 surveyed agencies that we looked at, and you can see those listed in the analysis there. So one of the things that we want to do is to bring on new staff, and to attract new staff, we want to look at how much we are currently paying staff and build out a salary schedule for staff. We want to look at our benefit program and our retirement program, again, in a way to attract staff. We found that at present, our staff are general manager, the equivalent in similar organizations in community services districts, that the range for the salary is somewhere between 80 to 150,000 a year. And for the assistant general manager, it's somewhere between 65 and 120. As I stated earlier, our salaries, our current salaries are some of the lowest in comparison to our comparable agencies. And those are the 16 comparable agencies that we looked at. And Jonathan, could you just go over to Exhibit A really quick? As a matter of fact, the next page.
Sure.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, right above that, the fiscal. Well, that's good. That's good. We can leave that there.
Could you just continue to present the benefits being recommended under
Okay.
retirement?
Okay. So along with the ad hoc committee also determined we will look at the benefits as part of that total compensation. And in respects to that, we want to look at, again, health, dental, and a vision plan. We're looking at covering the costs for those, again, to attract qualified or the most qualified candidates. And we found that when we looked at the survey cities, again, most of those agencies were providing benefits to their employees. Those particular benefits and an overview of the benefits that we're considering are also attached so that you can, as we move to the pricing, you'll see that information presented there. And it's pretty broad because it's the package that we looked at from our preferred vendor right now, which is that GSMRA vendor. Are there any questions with that? No? Okay. In regards to retirement, again, we are looking at the 457B program. We haven't chosen a vendor yet. We are still looking at vendors. We have a simple IRA that our staff is currently eligible to participate in, but we're finding that they are not participating in that at all. And we believe that it's really the pricing of what's being offered. So that is why we're looking at our contribution as an employer with the 457B and the employee's contribution. We, as you see here, we decided that 9% and 3%, again, is most reflective of what other agencies or comparable agencies are offering. And so we want to be as competitive in the marketplace with those other agencies. We will continue to pay into Social Security at present. What we have here is a fiscal impact for the proposed changes that we're looking at. And you can see here our current health, vision, and dental plan and payment, for example, in the GM's table here, that is our current Q-SARA payment. It comes out to about $441 a month. Our proposed plan with health, vision, and dental, which will be purchased through GSMRA, for our regular full-time employees at a platinum program, would cost us $12,339. And so that's an increase of $70.47 for the health, vision, and dental. Retirement, our proposed retirement is the 9% contribution, 3% matching by employees. Again, we have the simple IRA right now that allows employees to participate at a 3% matching. If the employer pays 3%, if the employee contributes 3%, then the employer matches that 3% based on the total salary. You see those amounts there. At the increase would be $4,700 for our general manager, and for myself, the assistant general manager, would be $4,100. So those are the increases that we're proposing for the health and vision and dental and the retirement. We will be looking into housing, but you see that we have an immediate fiscal impact in our total annual cost of about $22,894. And those amounts I just want to go back to that really quick, are dependent on our negotiations with the GM and myself. So those are not hard numbers. So it'll depend on the actual awards that are made or the change in salaries that are made. We are making recommendations for change in salaries. Those should be on the very next table. Yeah. So you see here, our current salary range for our GM is between the 70 and 80. We are proposing a new salary range between 80 and 100,000. Again, that's in line with the 16 comparable cities who had for the GM, I think it was 80 to 150. So we are trying to stay relevant in our current marketplace. We did include information for our new community engagement director's position, and we will be moving forward with that and talking more about that. But we wanted to include that information here as a placeholder because we are negotiating the benefits that would be awarded to this community engagement director. So we want to make sure that we continue to look at the pricing for that also. And along those lines, you see here, we did do some, provide some information about our proposed plans for the district health benefits with the medical, the dental, and the vision. The pricing information that you see here, again, is from GSRMA. It's a vendor that we believe would best serve our needs. They currently support us with workers' compensation and risk management. We did look at a counterpart very much like them, which is SDRMA. And we did look at some general benefit information that is offered from CalPERS, but we found that they were the best. The pricing is comparable to what we could afford. So we want to put this forward as our recommendation. The other option that GSMRA did speak to us about was the ability to offer our part-time staff a package that would cost us a little bit less, significantly less. I'm not going to say a little bit because $300 is a lot to me. About $300 difference between the silver and the platinum PPO plans. And we would have to set forth the different class of employees, the full-time versus the part-time. That's a requirement by the vendor. So see our pricing there. And then if you scroll down just a little bit, Jonathan, you see again those annual costs just enumerated there for the changes. And you have the part-time and the full-time costs set forth. And again, those are based on the actual negotiated salaries and then the actual dollar figures that we'll calculate with GSMRA. And in regards to the retirement, as I shared earlier, we do want to look at the district contributing 9% of the employee's annual salary and the employee contributing 3% into this 457 plan, which would allow for pre-tax dollar contributions, which again, we think employees will find of greater benefit. And we are asking that they participate so that we experience the most benefit from our investment and theirs. So our final recommendations, as I stated earlier, were that we established the new salary ranges for the current staff, the general manager, the assistant general manager. We considered that salary range for the community engagement officer, if we can, and we'll move forward with that. And as we move forward with the job classification, our second recommendation then is for the benefits, which again would cover health, dental, and vision. And you have the pricing for that, the changes in pricing for that. And then last but not least, the 457B retirement pricing and package. And we will continue to source a vendor for that and ask that the ad hoc review that information and make a recommendation back to the board. Are there any questions?
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Yes, if there's any questions, and if any of our staff pay and benefits ad hoc committee members want to chime in and give any of their views or opinions on how we landed on this report, that'd be great as well.
Sure, I'm happy to chime in, but I want to go to questions first, and I see we have Director Deshler. So go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. My first question is, did the committee consider, instead of having a set healthcare plan, did the committee consider giving an allotment to staff to be able to purchase their own insurance?
Yes, it was, it's covered here that we did explore that, and it's way more expensive to give an equivalent benefit. Like for $960 premium in cash would cost $1,300 to the district.
I even will say that I, in some sense, was really pushing hard that yes, we should try to do this, and in the end, it did not seem like it was the correct thing to do. So
we could the cash in. Oh, I'm sorry, Kirsty. The cash in lieu just didn't seem cost effective for us with the size of staff that we have too.
And then I noticed that the health plans don't have dependent care coverage. Is that something that can be added later down the line?
Yeah. It is something that can be added, but at this time we're not covering dependent care.
Right. Okay, so that's very helpful. What about if somebody doesn't want to participate in the health insurance plan? They get health insurance from their spouse. Will they be able to have an equivalent monetary amount to substitute for that benefit, or it's basically use it or lose it?
We're recommending, we did talk about that, but I think we're recommending use it and lose it.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah,
that's what we're leaning toward.
GSRMA, even though they won't actually kick us out, also technically have rules on how many of your employees participate and percentage of them. But if someone does drop out for any reason, they're not going to kick us all out of the program. But that is one of their guidelines. And
Kirsten, that goes back to the issue of that time I'm just wanting to make sure I cover the issue was the number of employees. We have to have 75% of our employees enrolled in this program with GSMRA are regular full-time employees. We have to have 75% of that. So that is the other reason why we're moving forward as we look to recruit to establish these benefits, because we want to bring on another regular full-time and another regular part-time employee.
Okay. And then I wanted to know how you got at the 9%, 3% match. I understand for retirement. I understand 3% because you want the employee to have a commitment to their retirement, but why 3%? Why not 50-50?
Yeah, Bob, do you want to go into that a bit more, since I think you helped us reach that calculation?
Yeah, Kirsten, I think we look first at Isla Vista Rec and Park District, who have a CalPERS plan, and they contribute, their employer contribution is about 9%, and the employee contribution is about 3%. And we looked at other CalPERS participants, and that seems to be, the amount of money. Let's say we ever went to CalPERS someday, theoretically the employee who put in 9% and 3% would have enough money in their 457 plan that if we joined CalPERS, they would have enough money to buy their back service. So that's one alternative. The other thing about the 457 plan is for the employee, they can contribute, and I don't even know the total amount, but I think up to like maybe $18,000 a year. So they can contribute a lot more to their own retirement plan. So once they get used to putting that money in there, we really should do some education to the employees that if they can afford more, it really works that can be comparable to a CalPERS plan in the long run. And so that's kind of where we came for the 9% employer contribution, which would be similar to a CalPERS plan, and the same thing for the employees. It's one of the things that both on the health and on this retirement, because we're such a small entity and only have 3 to 4 employees, it's really difficult to get into these pools and get a reasonable amount of charges from the employer, because they're not getting this big group of employees into their retirement plan. And the same thing with the health insurance. We're joining a pool of people that have maybe a lot more older population in them. And so the rates coming back to somebody where we have younger people, we're probably paying more. But, the other thing we get here is in administration of the plan and explaining it to our employees. Like if you had the health insurance and let the employees make their own decisions, it's really difficult to go out into that world of health insurance and understand what you're really buying. So we thought on the health insurance, this was a good idea, at least for the next year and probably beyond that, but we should still keep searching for better plans and better and cheaper rates, hopefully for the district and the employees. That's kind of, and our last meeting was 3.5 hours just to get to this decision. It's a lot more complicated when you're looking at the data than you really realize in this nice, professional, simpler presentation that the staff has done.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps.
So then I just have 2 more questions. On the comparable agency, I noticed they were listed when you had it on the Excel spreadsheet, they were listed by number. And I just wondered, the number, does that correspond to, what is those? I mean, I see here it's a list, but when you did the comparable on the Google Sheet, they were listed, I'm just trying to understand, like and like is,
yes.
Yeah. That's what
So
I'm trying to understand.
the numbers don't correlate. That's just that's I don't even want to call it typos. So they just don't correlate. But the way they're ordered here is by salary. So they're ordered from lowest salary to highest salary, and that's how we chose to present it at the end, even though they had the numbers on this side.
Yeah, I was interested in agencies that are similar in scope and size to our agency. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah, so we did not actually end up putting the scope and size info into this final spreadsheet. We did have it presented at the last meeting when we had come up with the list. But these were the ones that not all of them are comparable to us 100%, but these were the ones that we found were closest. And some are comparable for different reasons. For example, we made sure to get every community services district in Santa Barbara County in there. Goleta is obviously not comparable in size or budget, but they're next door. So there were some decisions why some were put in. Same with Buellton and Solvang. They were kind of put in as aspirational. We might become a city like them one day, since they used to be small CSDs. But there's nothing that's as comparable as we would like it to be. So that's why we had 17 or 16 to have different amounts of comparison in each one.
Got it.
Kirsten, we did start with the size of operation, number of employees, and then annual budget. So we did set that as our benchmark.
Yeah.
And then we did look at, I think there were 300 and something, and we narrowed it down then to County of Santa Barbara. And then we looked at operations, what was most closely matching to our operational, sewers, streets, water, lights, safety.
Okay. So then my last question is more of a process question. So you've presented this pay and benefits report and you've made recommendations. what is the process by which we make the determination to increase the salary for the general manager and the assistant general manager? Is that embodied in this report? Is that a separate process? Are those two individuals on contract? Is there a regular review process? I'm just trying to understand at what point do we increase the salary of our staff?
Yeah, so it's not part of the report. What we're, it's right here in the recommendation that we need to authorize staff to set dates to consider the staff contracts. And we are on contract. We are supposed to have regular reviews that have never happened, except maybe they have happened once. The 6-month in reviews have happened, but then we're supposed to have annuals that never did. So this would be when we, I guess, would set those first reviews to do that.
Thank you.
And we did have, as Jonathan said, we did have I think we had our annual and our half year for.
No, just the half year.
Just the half year for both of us. Yes. Yeah. So, and yeah, we're have to negotiate new contracts, which impacts those final numbers.
No, updated contracts, but yes.
Update, yes.
All right, thank you for all of those questions, Director Dashler. I think you might have taken all the good ones.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. If there's anything, that I can say as a committee member that I think echoing what Bob said is that you can talk about these issues for hours and hours, and because there really are so many different ways of figuring out how to hire your staff, how to make sure that they are properly supportive, and make sure that we're doing something that's right for the agency. And I do think we exhausted just about all the options that we could come up with. So I don't know if there's anything else that I can really add other than I'm very appreciative of Deborah in particular. This committee, I think we took a lot more time than we thought we were going to, and we probably put a lot more on her plate in terms of asking her to research this and research that. We went in first, we looked at salary averages over a number of years. Then we said, no, we want the data from 2019. No, we want the data from 2020. It was very helpful that you could provide all that information to contextualize it for us. And I really feel that this recommendation represents something that is both within the limits of what our organization can do right now, our financial position and our size and our scope of what services we're providing, but is also something that will help us as we continue to grow as an organization when we do hire new employees and when we try and go out into the employment market and find employees that are going to serve our district well and incentivize them to build their careers here and grow this organization. Director Geis.
And I think it also just shows that we're pivoting as we grow, we're growing. And we found that, the original plan we did for retirement, our employees didn't participate. And on health insurance, they got a Coursera plan, but there was huge out-of-pocket costs for our employees because Coursera only paid $441, and you got out into that California workplace, and we really weren't providing health insurance. And so I think we're growing and will grow into the future in terms of the kinds of salaries and benefits we should have. But I was going to make some comments later on that in this report, we mention a step system, which a lot of governments have, and you have like 5 step increments that employees get, and you tie their performance reports to the steps. And to me, that's old government, and we should consider those programs, but just like we're the first special district that has a utility user tax in the whole state of California. We have a set of things we're responsible for that are very different than other community services districts. So just like we're kind of cutting edge in that way, I think we also need to be flexible on our salaries and benefits and how we do things in the future, thinking of performance reports. I don't like how most governments do performance reports and tie them to pay. I don't think it works. And I think, performance reports need to be tied to great goals and objectives. And I think we as a district are setting great goals and objectives. And when our staff can work on those goals and objectives, to me, they're being successful. So anyways, that's just a little thing I've been thinking about in terms of us moving forward. I think we need to put some good time and effort into how we're going to do performance reports and then how we tie that to pay. And I don't think they necessarily need to be tied together. Anyways, sorry about that.
No, thank you for your comments, Bob. Director Freeman, is there anything that you wanted to add as a member of the committee?
Nope. I pushed hard during the committee, and now we're at this position of having brought it to the board, and I thought the presentation from staff was very good. So.
Director Deschler?
So I have a question, because you've alluded to, or somebody alluded to, contract, that staff are on contract. Is that a different employee relationship than having staff of the agency? I don't is there a distinction? No, you're employees of the agency. Okay.
We're employees.
Okay.
We're not independent contractors. No.
Okay, that's what I wondered. And then I just have to say, and I'm sorry that I have to say this, but I just think the salaries are too low. And so I don't have anything to base it on except my own head. But when I look at the general manager position, to cap it out at 100,000, it seems too low to me. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of latitude to go. I mean, a couple increases and you're already bumped up against that 100. And I just don't understand why we wouldn't have more of a range. It seems we're already at 80,000. Why not have more of a range to, anyways? So that's what I have to say.
A deeper, are you saying a deeper range? Deeper range?
No, higher range. I just don't think it's high enough. I don't think it allows growth into that position. It just, in a couple of years, that position is going to max out at 100 grand.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Director Freeman, I see your hand.
Okay, I guess now I will chime in on this topic. So I agree with Bob's comments about how it feels very limiting in order to have this kind of like step type of things. I feel like the direction that we are looking at going into is that we negotiate with the people over time. And so, we negotiate with general manager if we have a new general manager. And so I looked at the discussion that we had during our committee meetings on the salary ranges as trying to fix the situation that we were currently in and for the near future, not necessarily to provide a firm bound that we will not go past, looking into the deep future. And from that standpoint, part of it was looking at our existing salaries going, oh, these aren't really high enough, really, like in the scope of this short term, looking at forward, providing ranges that would allow us to fix that in the near future and then tending to come back to it. So
that's helpful.
I'm totally with you on that, though, on the idea that.
And I agree with Jay on those comments. So.
Yeah, I would also add to that the employment relationship that we have with Jonathan as our general manager is different than we have with any of our other staff, because Jonathan is an at-will employee who responds directly to the board of directors, and all the other employees report to Jonathan. So it's a different, that in specific, although there is a range there, it's ultimately, always comes down to our negotiations as a board with the general manager when it comes to that position specifically.
And so we wanted to be sensitive to that as we looked at salary scales and then built out salary ranges. We don't want to experience any compression. We don't want to, have any creep. So we were looking at that also as we set those scales, as we set those ranges.
Yeah, but what I heard Jay and Spencer say is that those aren't set in stone, that this is just kind of to get us through the next maybe year or two, but that the scales and the cap is not set in stone.
Correct, because
Okay.
we did talk as a management team for the need to look at salaries on a regular ongoing basis. And we'll be participating in the CSDA survey on a regular and ongoing basis. Jonathan, I think, has a second salary survey to participate in. So as we're growing and expanding as an organization, we're able to get tied into and participate in and get that information. So we will have to come back and look at this again, but on a regulatory basis even.
And I even said to the committee, what if Deborah and I, disappeared today? Are these the ranges that you would want for whoever is the conclusion, which I agree with, is that, well, if that happened, we'll need to just remake our salary ranges. We have to rediscuss this. And this is the salary range as it is now, but circumstances can change and we can change them.
Any other comments from board members? I'm not seeing anything, so I'll just highlight one thing because I remember myself and I believe Director Geis and I want to say it was Director Thurlow, maybe, I don't remember who else it was, to be honest, it was so long ago. But we served on the committee that tried to find ourselves some staff. Wasn't that long ago until mid to late 2017 that we didn't have any staff. We didn't even have legal counsel hired. And at the time, our employment relationship with Jonathan as our first general manager, as interim general manager, as a contractor, was a sorry excuse for an employment relationship. The compensation that we provided at the time was, I believe, $3,000 to $5,000, and there were no benefits. There was no rights as an employee because it was a contractor relationship. But it was sort of the parameters that we had to operate under as a government with no ongoing tax revenue back in the day, as I say. And so I just want to take a moment because I think this represents a really significant step forward where we're now providing a full-time healthcare coverage that is good coverage that ensures that our employees are done right by, that they can stay healthy, they can cover the costs, health costs, and a retirement plan that is comparable to other public agencies, but still make sure that our district is moving in a sustainable financial direction, which I think are two really incredible steps forward. And so I'm very happy. This feels like a moment to me where the community service districts continues to grow up a little bit, if you will. And so it's a good moment for me. So with that, I don't know if there's any other questions from board members, or you know what, I should go to public comment. Any members of the public have comments on this item? You can put it in the chat or raise your hand. And I'm not seeing anything, so I'll bring it back to the board. If there's any further discussion, or if not, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move the recommendation. Do I need to read it, the whole thing? Okay. I'll move the recommendation as spelled out in the board report.
All right.
I will second.
Made by Deschler and seconded by Friedman. Any other board discussion for the good of the order? Okay, we'll go to roll call vote.
Director Brent?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Director Deschler?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Geis?
Yes.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
And Director Freeman?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to community members and our staff for that. We're going to move to closely related item 4.3, which is the Community Engagement Director.
Okay, give me 1 second. Computer is struggling with all these Google Docs open. So,
is it dinner time yet? I'm just curious. What do we do about dinner?
We used to eat before.
Oh, dang it.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I do miss getting the tacos. It's Taco Tuesday at Rosarito. Yeah, Ross is nodding his head. All right, go ahead, Jonathan.
Here we go. All right. So I'm glad we made that decision because we've already assumed some of these decisions in this one. I'm just joking. We were anticipating we would change it if we had to. So I'm happy to present the Community Engagement Director position, final draft, but we can still make any edits if you all have input. Like was said before, this is another one of those moments where we're really growing a lot as a district because community engagement has always been one of our values that we've espoused, but not something we can dedicate a lot of dedicated time to and focus, not just time, but focus and energy to make a comprehensive and robust system. So this position really encompasses that value of the CSD, how we were formed and how we've tried to do our business since March of 2017, but how we can take that to the next level. So I just want to read about the position, which you can see it, but I think it captures the purpose of the position really well, which is the Community Engagement Director supports the district's goals to build stronger relationships within the district and the wider community, to expand awareness and utilization of the district services, and to regularly engage, educate, and gather feedback from community members. So that's what I saw in our goals over and over. That's what we want to do, and so that I think this position can truly capture that. We have a list of duties here that might look very long. Obviously, they're not going to be doing all of these duties at all times, but I did break them up into these 3 different areas. This first section here are their duties that as they relate to building relationships and interpersonal communication within the community, which is very important. We want to do our mass media, but it's those interpersonal meetings, one-on-one or groups that we also hear in a lot of our surveys and feedback is how we can really do a lot to raise the profile of the community services district. So that's that first section. The second section is really based around the mass communication, social media, door-to-door, press releases, newsletters, things like that. So that really the technical part of this is the message we have and getting it out. And then this last part is the engagement part, which is planning those events like the town hall, and not just planning them, but really planning them with a critical eye and how we can make it as engaging as possible. Working on education so that we can put it out there to the communities so they can learn more about local government and how we operate and have a stronger opinion on things, and just work as much as possible to organize just different spaces and forums and ways that the CSD can receive information from the public and have discussion and dialogue happen that we are organizing ourselves or in partnership. So that's like the 3 general areas of work for the position. They're going to work on weekends and evenings because a lot of our community works and is active and is engaging with each other on weekends and evenings. So they will be having a flexible schedule in that way. And these are just some of the skills and knowledge and abilities that we're hoping they will have. Nothing to really highlight here. We're putting Spanish preferred but not required, and also something on graphic design. We're not going to expect this person to be the graphic designer, but if they can take care of 75% of the work, and then we can contract with our trusted partners for the high level important graphic design materials. That's the kind of idea we'd have. So, but they can at least get a lot of the work done and getting flyers out to promote our events and meetings just more effectively. And then in terms of experience in education, we went with a bachelor's degree is preferred or its equivalent. So a bachelor's degree or its equivalent. And then 3 to 5 years working is preferred. So it's not required, but 3 to 5 years working in these fields of public relations, communications, organizing, marketing. And then just the timeline, it's here in front of you. It's the same exact timeline we used on Deborah's hiring process, literally May 1st to July 1st or August 1st. And GSRMA actually will have the health benefits ready for us to use by August 1st. So it does match well. So even if they came in on July 1st, we have the 30-day probationary period, and then they'd get their benefits on the 1st. And then a little description about the CSD, which is a little updated from years past. So that is the summary of the job description. I just want to quickly show you the fiscal cost or fiscal impact. We're gonna negotiate, and it's gonna be depending on experience, the salary, but that's the range we just approved. But this is just the cost for the position over different ranges. If we hire them at the low end, 60,000, the total cost of the position is 84, and if we hire them at the highest end, 75,000, the position will cost us $101,000. So that's the range of the cost of the district, is 84 to 101. I think I gave a guess to the finance committee before we even had our salary ranges of 80 to 100, and I'm glad I got it right. But that's where we're going to be at for the cost. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's everything I have to present. I'd love to hear your questions and feedback. I think one last point is how are we going to get this out there? How are we going to promote the job? What we've done in the past is we've used the traditional spaces like the CSDA and governmentjobs.com websites. And I think those do produce a lot of good results. But also there's UCSB and SBCC have job posting boards for their alumni. So we'll utilize that. And if anyone has any further ideas, we'll also do our word of mouth. There's different community organizations that we'd like to share it with. That's how Deborah actually found about the job. A community organization got the posting, and then I think she heard about it from them. So we'll do a strategy like that where we work with local organizations just to make sure they're aware and they can share it with their membership. So I think that's all to present, and I want to hear any questions and feedback.
Thank you for the presentation, Jonathan. I think I saw a hand. I don't know where it went. There it is, Director Freeman, go ahead.
Yes, so when this job description had come before last time, I had mentioned that I have worked closely with somebody named Britta Gustafson who does this kind of work, and therefore I was running it past her to see what her thoughts were. I ran this newest draft past her, and I have some new feedback. One thing that came up in this presentation, which I think actually really probably does need to be addressed somehow, is that it is a very long list of tasks that we are not expecting that people are doing all of constantly. That was something that Britta and I had also both noticed, and Jonathan's even pointing it out. Maybe something along the lines of like, you would work with the general manager to identify priorities in specific projects, such as doing some, not all of the following examples, or to make it sound like it's not like, oh, you're asking me to run a small company here in exchange for, like a employee's worth of work, or worth of salary. There was a statement which is to provide technical assistance to district staff, contractors. The way that reads to the type of people I think would end up doing this job is it makes it sound like we're going to do IT work. So it's like, okay, is your laptop not turning on? And so removing the word as technical seems to solve that, merely providing assistance, beyond community problem solving, et cetera. There are two places where it says develop, maintain a database of community contacts, or and one where it's like develop and maintain a map of highly visible flyer posting locations. I'm going to suggest changing both of those to merely list. Making it a database and a map makes it sound like you're going to be doing either GIS work, you're going to be expected to like maintain an access database or something, whereas you're probably just going to be doing this inside of a like a Google Sheets or something. It's just a spreadsheet. So saying it's a list, I think makes it feel a lot easier there. manage the Ivcsd website to ensure it is user-friendly, transparent, current, legally compliant, engaging. It makes it sound like you're going to actually be doing the website development and handling all of these legal compliance issues, which we have explicitly in the past outsourced that to that company, whose name I'm now forgetting, but that everyone locally uses, Slingline or something like that.
Streamline, yeah.
Streamline. And in fact, I imagine what you're really trying to get out of that is that this person will be updating content on the Ivcsd website to ensure that it's clearly written and up to date. And in that sense, it would be satisfying our transparency requirements. But the idea is not that it's like their job to like watch all the new laws and figure out how to apply them inside of the website code or something. There's a place where it says produce graphic design materials. The recommendation is to say produce simple graphic design materials to make it clear that it's not that you're expected to be like the Chelsea level graphics designer, but that you are somebody who's going to be posing photos and various things into like posters and banners. I was glad to see that the 3 to 5 years of experience is preferred got added earlier today. That's good there. And then the last question I have here is there's this line which is conduct networking activities, and I neither myself nor Britt were certain exactly what that really meant. So is it that like run networking events, or is it like go and network for the community, like for our district? If you mean both, I almost feel like you should say both.
Yeah, I'll just answer the last one, which is, you know, the network for the district. That's covered at the beginning, I think, pretty extensively, like regularly attend meetings, build relationships. But this would be more like they might want to put on something with businesses to talk to them. You know, they might organize a meeting with business owners so that we can talk with them on how we can better utilize SeeClickFix for them, which is something, you know, might be hard for our SeeClickFix staff to do themselves. But you know, this person would have established all those contacts and say, you know, let's get the business groups together to talk about this. So that's kind of what we mean by networking, is us organizing, you know, groups to have discussions, community meetings.
Yeah,
maybe then conduct networking meetings and run stakeholder events, something to make it clear what that really is meaning.
Sure.
Yeah, Jay, we had previously talked about the role that this person would play in networking activities. We found that the interns were out doing a lot of that face-to-face, and a good example was a project that we wanted to something we wanted to pull together was a waste management summit, but we really didn't have a PIO who could build out those relationships with the stakeholders and appropriate organizations and then put together a whole summit packet. So kind of along those lines. Is that a better picture?
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like this is like run events, and so I would have it as best like, you know, conduct networking meetings and run stakeholder events or something like that in order to make it clear what the activities are that we're talking about. So
sure. I think I captured all your notes in the doc, so we'll look at those.
Thank you for those, Director Freeman. Are there other comments from board members? Director Deschler.
Yeah, Jay, thank you for your comments. I have shared this with several of my colleagues who work in this field, and it's very, very, very broad is what I got back, that there are a lot of duties here, and that it might potentially really, first of all, you may not find the person that you're thinking that you might find at the salary. It's a really, really, really big job description, and I don't know. If I read this, I'd be a little freaked out looking at the salary level. I don't know if we're gonna get the person that we want, and with the salary level, and then with all the different things that we're asking them to do. I think, you know, Jonathan, you saying these are just like recommended activities is helpful, but frankly, the job, this description is a little bit scary. I really think it needs to be much more simple and simplified. And I liked how you had like 3 bulleted points that talked about kind of the 3 focus areas. I think a lot of this can be condensed because I just think it's a bit overwhelming. And that's the feedback that I got from two people that are in this field. The other thing that I didn't know, and I'm not opposed at all, is I didn't realize that this was a director position. Somehow when we had talked about this before, I thought this was more of a someone who's under your direction, but is not necessarily a director level, which is fine. I just was surprised to see it, but I think it's actually a really good title, and definitely what you want them to do and the level of responsibility that they're taking on behalf of the organization is definitely commensurate with being called a director. And then some of the other comments is that I do think that this position should have their own budget. Or have a designated amount of funds that they're going to need for doing the newsletter and production and all different kinds of things, and probably also all the different things they're going to have to produce. That's going to be important. And then I think you mentioned that they'll be managing interns. To do this job, they're going to need 2 to 3 people, no question. To do it well, the way you expect it, they're going to need more people, I would say. And then lastly, I would say, when you put the salary, I would put also the amount of the salary when you add the benefits, because that will be attractive. To put 60 to 75 is nothing. When you but when you put that the benefits are $12,000 a year for health insurance and that kind of thing, it'll make it more attractive, because it's not just that salary, it's above that. And then the last thing is, I think it would be really helpful, and maybe you've already considered this, is that as part of the hiring process that you establish, and this is something we do at UCSB and we also did it at GLEDA, is some stakeholders that will interview the person and then make recommendations, make the top 3 to the general manager. So I would say I think that's important, to have some community engagement as part of the hiring process. I'm so sorry to be negative. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing job description. I mean, I love everything about it. I'm just wondering if this person exists. That's all. Fingers crossed.
No, it's a good point. Oh, so let me please respond on the last point. Well, actually, you know what? Never mind. I actually, if you could repeat your last point, Kirsten, I actually had an answer to it.
Oh, just to have a hiring panel that is a representative of the community.
Yeah, Deborah and I were discussing that right before the meeting started. So we're right there with you. And good point on the salary. And we actually don't even have the value of our health plan on here. So we'll that's actually a good call to put the value of the health plan on there too, for marketing purpose. Just kind of like respond on the scope. It's hard. I mean, I thought about making it shorter, and Deborah and I had a shorter version, but I went with the longer version because I didn't want to have it up to chance in the future when, as priorities and things change, and we want something done. I don't want someone to do this. It's not part of my job description. So that's why I went with the wider scope, and I think it's going to be my challenge and my job to kind of steer the ship and make sure that the top priority community engagement work is happening compared to the lower priority. And it is going to be a really big challenge. I mean, I'm going to have to work with this person to really build out, how we roll out the expansion of community engagement with the district. Like, we've done all these disparate things and now they'll come under one roof. So it's not going to be easy. I think even if we reduced it, which I think we could, there are some that are not redundant, but similar to each other. We could reduce it, but I think the scope might stay the same unless we don't want to do some things. But I did feel like these 3 areas are generally what we're going to want to do, which is go to a bunch of meetings and build relationships, do the mass communications, and do the kind of engagement and education work. So maybe we could rework it, but I think it is going to be a pretty broad scope regardless.
Yeah, maybe just visually, Jonathan, what you do is you put those 4 bullet points, and then underneath that you put kind of examples of duties, and then at least it simplifies kind of what the job looks like.
Right, that's a great point. Thank you.
So we did talk about this as a job description being the big umbrella, and then narrowing it down as we did our search and our advertising. So that's right in line with what you were suggesting, but we didn't want to narrow the breadth of the work that someone who filled the position could be asked to perform. We could certainly advertise for something more narrow and immediate, but we want our job description to be as encompassing as possible for possible tasking.
I just want to follow up on something that Kirsten mentioned that I completely agree with as very necessary, which is that if we want this position to succeed, we need to make sure that we provide them with the resources that they need to succeed and some autonomy, over making sure that they have a say in how those dollars are spent in order to accomplish those goals. And so that is something that we've spoken about briefly at the budget committee meetings when we're looking at the budget for next year, because there is definitely, if this person is hired and succeeds and does their job as we all hope that they will, that's going to be, I think, a bigger expenditure over the next year. And I appreciate the comments that Kirsten and Jay have made about trying to simplify the duties. I think back to something that Bob taught me when we were first developing the general manager job description, and some of you who are on the board may remember him saying this, is we were looking at another sample contract, and he said, yeah, it almost seems like this contract, or this, it wasn't a contract, it was a job description. He said, it almost seems like this job description is all the reasons that this person can be fired for if they don't do the job. Now, I know that's not at all what our staff had in mind. And in a way, it was a little bit of just kind of a, facetious joking comment to make. But I do think that it is important, and it's good that it's been mentioned that we have two people that have floated this by other professionals in the field who also had confusion about some of those things as well. So maybe it would be good to have a second version and then float it by, those, whether they're our board members and who we've been sharing it with, or other people that we know who are in the field that can take a look at it, provide their suggestions before we set it live and float it to the public.
I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do that if that was a request. I don't know, but if it was, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm sure that Jonathan will be in touch with you that once it's more finalized. Any other comments from directors? All right, not seeing any. Oh, I do see one. Catherine, go ahead.
This is just kind of small, but I was just wondering, because there will be some changes to this, how much the timeline will change, because I know it says that important dates May 1st. I don't know if it'll be similar to that, or if it'll still need to come back next meeting for approval and everything.
That's up to the board if you want to approve it and have us make revisions and then post it or bring it back. But we'd have to just change the timeline.
Any directors have thoughts on that?
I would say bring it back, just given all of the different comments that have been made tonight. And I think it'll be good for directors to see what the updated version looks like, and which I'm sure will accomplish what's been mentioned. But just knowing how important this position will be, and that we really want to set you all up for success in recruiting the person and set that person up for success, I think it's good to bring it back.
I agree.
Excellent. And does anyone want to make a motion to that effect?
Wait, I have something else. One thing that I just wonder about is that, is it possible that we could have a community engagement manager who makes more than our other employees with this time frame of recruitment?
I think the contract negotiations can happen before August 1st.
That's what I just wanted to make sure.
All right, great question. Any directors anyone have a motion to that effect that we were just talking about?
Okay, I'll make a motion. Good Lord. Ethan, you want to do? Okay, Ethan's
Sure,
gonna do.
I got you, no worries. Direct staff to come back with an updated job description for the community engagement director.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded, and now we will open public comments. I see we have a hand, so I'll go ahead and go to you, Mark, and anyone else with a comment can put something in the chat or raise your hand.
Before I make my comment, can I clarify, is this public comment for the motion that was just made, or is this public comment for the job, the position? Because I didn't hear public comment for just
I think they're both, it's both at the same time.
Got it, okay. So, briefest little anecdote. I have a friend, not going to mention her name, but she dropped out of high school because she was an alcoholic and had a really tough life. And then eventually in her late 20s, became an organizer and is really doing great work. And I think would be super, super apt for this position. And she is not qualified for this position because she does not have a college degree. Because in the verbiage of the document, it doesn't say that a college degree is recommended. It doesn't say it's like recommended but not required. It's there as a qualification. And so when I think about a job like this one, that I've heard a lot of discussion about like the type of person that needs to be doing this role, I think about like the type of organizing that I do when it comes to the volunteers that I want to have. And I think of this acronym we have called ASK: attitude, skill, and knowledge. And so for a job like this one, I think above all else, you need someone that has the best possible attitude. You need someone that is curious. You need to have someone that is thoughtful. You need to have someone that is community driven and creative. The skill and the knowledge are important, and I know that's what all of those bullet points are for, but a lot of that is going to be given straight from Jonathan, explaining methods, explaining needs, and having this person use their natural curiosity and their natural community drive to make this position the best position it can be. And so the way I see it written right now is it precludes people with an associate degree. It precludes people who could be really, really good at this job that just don't have a college degree. And so I really want to emphasize that, like, I think this job is about someone who can like emotionally embed in this community and engage it. And I don't necessarily think that certain like kind of skills or bullet points are necessarily associated with having the best sort of person for this particular job. I think degrees are like a useful measure for some things, like technical knowledge. I want, my accountant to have a degree. I want my engineer to have a degree, but I don't know if it's necessary for this. And then my less important point is I'm applying for jobs right now. It kind of sucks. And I do like it when there is actually a thoroughness to job descriptions. I think there's some job descriptions that have like a brevity job description, and then later on there's like an extended duties and responsibilities that goes into more detail, and it helps me like understand what I'm applying for, and I have a better sense of things. So I think the comments that were made about like shortening it are valuable, and I want to make sure that's just like done artfully, because I think there's a lot of value for clearly laying out like what the job is and what sort of like mindset a person wants to go into when they apply for it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Mark. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Not seeing any hands or anything in the chat, so I'll bring it back to the board for final comments from the board. Director Freeman.
For what it's worth, I agree with Mark on the degree comment. So Britta, when she was doing that work for Soric IT, was doing it before she completed her degree initially. She had been doing, actually no, when Soric IT she was doing afterwards, but she was doing it for Yahoo. For Yahoo, she was doing this kind of work. She was doing it before she had completed her degree at UCSB. She had gotten her start doing this when working for Delicious Bookmarks and before she had completed her degree. And I think that a lot of the skill set comes up. I really loved, and I wrote it down, the comment from Mark, that this job should be about someone who can really emotionally embed embed with this community and engage it. And that property of having somebody who's really good at being able to engage something, particularly in the 2020s now, of people being some people are just really naturally good at causing social media experiences for people and drawing people into things. And interestingly enough, I could almost imagine, I'm not suggesting this at all, but I could imagine, like a high school student being actually like, oh my God, you're like a god of doing this, some of these aspects of these tasks, with all the work that people are doing now with TikTok and Instagram and all these sorts of things. So having somebody who is has an associate's degree, or having somebody who's be able to be more flexible on that makes a lot of sense to me. So.
Thank you for that. Director Bertrand.
Yes, I agree. And I actually misinterpreted what was said in the presentation earlier when looking under experience in education, it says a bachelor's degree from an accredited college/university or equivalent. And I took that as or equivalent work experience, but I now realize that's not what was intended by that. So I absolutely agree. There are people who have work experience, life experience, interest, talent that should still be considered.
I'll second specifically that comment that when I read or equivalent, I also initially had thought of something like on the job equivalency or demonstration of all of like understanding of all these things. And so I did like, yeah.
I guess I'll third that then and concur with those comments.
I'll fourth it.
Okay, so the motion is to direct staff to return with an updated job description for the board's approval at a later meeting. Is there any other discussion amongst the board about the motion? Okay, and then with that, let's go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes.
Deshler?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Yes.
Geis?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Freeman? Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, staff, for all your work on this. I'm sure that we are all so eager to get this process rolling, but thank you for being flexible with all of the different things that we want to see out of this process. Folks, we're looking for a unicorn with this position almost, regardless of what the job description is. It can be difficult to find someone who's got all these different talents, but I'm sure we can, because we're mission driven. That's what we do. And we will attract like-minded people as we have in the past. So, okay, we're going to go to review of Community Service District Community Programs Budget.
Great. So we had our Finance Committee meeting this week. Was it only this week or last week? And we covered the community programs area of the budget, which is one of the largest. It's this year was 574,000 budgeted. So I just was going to go over the notes of what the Finance Committee kind of landed on for each discussion, and kind of see where the board's at, as we're in the budget development process. So this could be very simple, could be maybe not as simple. So so for the first area, the Ivy Community Center and the community room, we talked about having budgets for the operational and programmatic costs for the time as negotiations continue, and that we will need to rework the staff structure and budget for the community center and community room, since the positions are vacant and a lot of time has passed since we had last designed that staff structure. So no final, no proposals, but we just said let's focus on the programmatic and operational costs and start looking at a new structure and how that might cost. The finance or the special projects, which was originally 30,000, but then an additional 30,000 was added from the elimination of the community policing fund. We just said, let's just keep this the same for now. So, we've used it for different projects. Halloween at Home and the food distribution, for example, came out of there this year. Survivor Resource Center, we said we'll keep it the same. We're going to need to reestablish operations in person with STESA anyways. as things change in the next couple months. Program development, we said keep it the same. $0. We've used this in the past to start new programs, but we've got other places to do that now. Community garden, discuss keeping it the same, but potentially using some of the new staff we'd be investing in on the Compost Collective to just encourage more collaboration between that program and other parts of Ivcsd. Compost Collective. So we talked about how the grant that we had reported we had to give back was actually being extended to us for longer. So we have a better situation with the amount of funds for the Compost Collective, and a program manager who's part-time would cost about $30,000. Getting paid in the 20-some, low 20 hours a week, or 20 hours per hour, low $20 per hour, sorry. And then receiving the $7,500 health benefit would land them around $30,000. And then for the community festival, which we did spend some this year, we just said, let's keep that the same while we look into how we actually get this done in the future and hopefully start earlier and maybe do an RFP. So, but we're going to keep the total the same, 55,000. So that's the community programs budget. And I don't know if the finance committee members want to chime in too before discussion or.
Nothing to add from me. You summarized it well.
I concur with that. Any questions from board members? Director Freeman. Oh, did we lose you?
I'm sorry, you did not lose me, but I was rapidly trying to go and get this. My headset occasionally runs out of batteries, and I'm using like AirPods, and I keep like switching the AirPods off, and I finally was just using the speakerphone now, and the speakerphone was like, well, if I'm going to speak, I'm going to get an actual microphone. So my questions are mostly like I imagine they're just going to be about oh, that's considered to be under this item, and it's just how we organize it. So we have a beautification program that we run that we pay people for. Where is that on this budget?
It's not part of this budget. It's part of Public Works.
Oh, okay. All right. Then I get, okay. Yeah, I've got like a list of things where I'm like, why aren't any of these things on the budget? Why is the amount of money they're spending? Okay, I misunderstood then what the, all right. What is the difference between a program and the beautification not program?
Well, the way we've organized our budget for the last 2 or 3 years is by 8 different programs. It's a budget term, but they're also related. We related them to our powers. So the community programs, 3,000 is related to the operate, manage community facilities power. The Public Works program, which is number 7,000, is related to the manage, construct, operate sidewalks, lighting, gutters, street trees. So we have different programs in our budget of how we organize our money, and community programs is the one that's related to that power of operating.
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I apparently I had completely the wrong mental context for this. I mean, like when I got this, I was even like, I feel like they're missing pages, but no, actually, it's probably nice if they really simplified it down, just like what we're actually doing. But that seemed to be missing. Yes. All right. Thank you for
no
answering my silly question.
No problem. In the budget, the budget letter from last year, which is on our budget website this year, if you remember that breaks down the programs more clearly and like what's under what.
I find the term community programs, I guess, a little bit vague. So yeah.
Yeah, we made that word up in 2018. It was descriptive at the time. We can rework the names.
Any other comments from directors? Not seeing any. I'll open it up for public comments. If there's any comments or feedback on the community programs budget. I'm not seeing anything in the chat or any hands raised. I will remind the board and the public that this is not the final approval of the budget. That will happen later in the year when we will have a specifically noticed budget hearing. And there are many opportunities to continue to engage with our budget process. Tomorrow, the budget committee is holding a town hall, which we have publicized to the community and encourage residents to fill out the survey that we have for our community programs, not just our community programs, but all Ivcsd programs, as well as attend the budget town hall and provide their feedback over Zoom. So hope to see you there for that. Other than that, I thank you, staff, for presenting this. Anything else from directors? Director Freeman.
On the topic you just brought up, something that I had not realized until earlier today, and it was somewhat to my dismay, was that I when we've been talking about the budget town hall before, I had assumed that it would be a whether it be meeting as agendized as a special meeting of the board, or whether it would be a community process or something. I only realized earlier today that it was a finance committee meeting as opposed to a board meeting, and therefore is restricted in participation of board members with relation to it. So I just wanted to express some unhappiness there, but it's fine. So.
Yeah, we can take that into note for next year. We've usually planned it this way in the past.
Yeah, I believe so. So yeah, that's a good point. I will remind directors, though, you are always welcome to view it. I know we always had this issue in the past when it was in person. Now it's a little bit more easier to understand that, yeah, you can view something without participating. But yeah, encourage everyone to do that as well. Director Deschler.
I have an administrative issue that I need to bring up, and that is it would be really nice if we could take like a 10-minute break at some point, because frankly, my mental capacity after a couple hours, I need a little bit of a break. So maybe it's just me, but I couldn't even pay attention to this because I'm tired. So that's all. FYI.
Sure. Well, thank you for asking and requesting. I think once we conclude this, I'm happy to call a 5-minute recess. I also want to be mindful of the public and their timeline as well. So is there any other comment from directors on the community programs budget? Okay, then with that, we'll close out this item and we will go to a 5-minute recess, upon which returning, we will go into the district COVID-19 response. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get set to call the meeting back to order. Hope we all got nourishment. All right. I'm going to call the meeting back to order at 8:57 p.m. and we're going to move to district COVID-19 response. I'll hand it over to staff.
Great. Not a lot of huge updates besides the exciting one that we're actively working with community organizations to find sites for a mobile vaccination clinic. So that's something we're actively working on and hoping to find something soon in the next week or two. Spencer and I met with some organizations and we've got some other leads to look into. So if anyone has any, knows anybody who'd be willing to use a large parking lot or indoor space, let us know. We're asking the obvious ones, but you know, if you have any personal connections, that's better.
Director Deschler.
I just wanted to, in reference to that, I wanted to let people know that the university is, the county is going to be holding their mobile clinic at the university, the Student Health Center, May 6th, next Thursday. And so students can register online at the Student Health portal for appointments. And that's going to be the first of many, maybe, of these mobile clinic coming to campus. And Jonathan, I wasn't aware that you were also looking to do something in Isla Vista. I was going to suggest it, so I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Director Deschler. That's really good news to hear. It's so great to see more and more of our residents getting vaccinated. It's little steps back towards normalcy, and it makes me feel really excited. I'm one shot in, I get my next shot on May 4th. So, and I know other directors, I think, are in similar situations. So our timeline is coming up quick, which is really awesome. I did have one thing that I wanted to bring up to the board just to start the discussion, because as we move further and further towards in the tier system towards reopening, and more members of the public and our board and our staff become vaccinated, I think we should just start thinking about our transition back into the physical space, the physical world. And I just wanted to start that conversation, see if anyone had feedback, because I know it's an important topic, but I know also preserving the ability for the public to participate in this remote way, I think, is a really important thing for me personally. I've seen how one of the silver linings of COVID is that because of Zoom, we've opened so many doors for public participation. And in the past, it's been a huge barrier for people to have to drive out to a location, go sit in the meeting. That's a big commitment. And I think it's just really great that we're able to have this forum. So I just want to see if any directors have feedback sort of as we think about moving forward. Or our staff as well. I'm sort of I haven't talked with Jonathan about this. I'm just throwing it out there because I just want to see what everyone thought. Director Freeman?
I definitely think that it's important to be able to provide this virtual option. And I think also there's a bill that we've been hearing about that's been going through that might even start requiring this. I've been trying to figure out how to best provide such, because there's always this issue, right, where it's like right now these meetings are great because we're all remote and we all therefore have reasonable audio and reasonable cameras. So as soon as you have a vast majority of people who are in a room together, which is something that I'm trying to work through with the same SCSD without also though spending all the time driving back and forth. We're trying to not have everyone together for other COVID reasons, but they've got their meetings are quite challenging because they actually have some people physically, and then they have people remotely who have a hard time hearing the people who are physically, and then you oftentimes are literally you have a camera just on Karen, and so I've been trying to figure out how to bridge the video so we can do like a 360 video through to like the group, but the audio is just really troublesome, and I'm not certain. Like I've seen other. It gets really brutal of like trying to get in lots of little separate mics. The audio that I had before I thought was quite good, but I'm need to spend more time trying to figure out how to do the echo cancellation. If I would have a big television monitor that shows the people who are remote, trying to make it so that doesn't cause some kind of problem with the. So, I'm looking into things, but I would love to us have the most technical solution we possibly can to have the most people being able to be involved at once. So.
Great. Yeah. Well, I've seen even in meetings, I know that you've participated in, Director Freeman, with LAFCO. I have seen that it's been a challenge at times with the remote and in-person components. So we'll have to put our heads together on that for sure. Ross, is there anything you have to share about the pending legislation?
Yeah, the one that's got the most action right now is AB 339, and it's of the three, it is the one that is least favored by the Special Districts Association because it's essentially a state mandate, but no funding that would require the continuation of a remote option for observing and participating, and with two options. For an option or requirements, I'm sorry, for languages for the two most widely spoken languages in the jurisdiction other than English, and some other translation and some accessibility requirements. CSDA is not supporting it in its current form because of those mandated requirements that kind of go above and beyond simply providing this as an option. There are two other bills that are not quite as far along as AB 339. One of them would allow for a return to this format if a local emergency is called, not just under the current circumstances or future circumstances where the governor issues an emergency order or issues executive orders. So if you had a local declaration of an emergency, public agencies would be able to default to this format without some type of a broader state intervention. And then kind of the middle ground between those is amending the Brown Act to allow for a version of the current remote participation to go forward, both for the public and for members of the jurisdiction's legislative body, so city or board of directors. Because once the executive orders are rescinded by the governor, and I reported on this last meeting when we are anticipating that might reasonably come into play, once those orders are rescinded without some type of legislative action, then the default, or going back to normal, if you will, is you have to have a quorum of directors within the physical boundaries of the jurisdiction. Any person taking part remotely has to be in a publicly accessible place. The agenda has to be posted 72 hours ahead of time, just like for the regular meeting notice in the district at the physical location. So there are a lot of requirements under the Brown Act that have become really outdated. And so of the three bills that are pending, I don't have the number handy, but that is the one that we're watching because that has the most support through the CSDA, because it strikes a better balance between the interests of having people present physically with also remote participation and also remote observation and participation by members of the public, which was going to be my report tonight for district council. So there you go.
All right, well, we got it out of the way early, and that's good to hear. I understand CSDA always has to take the position that they feel is best for the bottom line of districts collectively, but I really feel that this is a huge priority, and hope that the legislature will come with an outcome that is very progressive and allows for as much participation as possible. But we'll all put our heads together to try and figure out how to do that. Maybe we need to invest in some of those lavalier mics. All right, I see a hand, Director Freeman.
To maybe defend the CSDA a little bit, I mean, some special districts, there are cemetery districts in our county that are, they effectively are meeting in a shed right now. And when you look at their budget, they are scraping it together as best they can. And to then add on to a requirement that now they're going to have an internet connection in that shed. they're going to be, even that alone is already going to be seriously problematic for them, much less than having some kind of reasonable audio equipment that they're going to be able to hear people and other people are going to, and the management of all of that, the technical knowledge of how to run it. It can be brutal for them. And so the unfunded mandate complaint from CSDA is something that I sympathize with. So as much as I think that I want everyone to have this. So.
Any other comments from directors on COVID-19 response? Okay, then we will close this item and we will move to item 5, reports. First, reports from members of the board. Any board members have reports they'd like to give? Not seeing it. Oh, I do see one from Director Geis.
I just wanted to say that I'll miss the forum tomorrow as a member of the finance committee. So I just have some personal business to attend to, so I won't be able to make that. Hopefully it doesn't affect our quorum.
Thank you for that. I don't think that it should affect our quorum. I think we should be good. Okay, any other director reports? Okay, we'll go to reports from committees. I think we gave our finance committee report. We hope to see everyone tomorrow. And we gave the report on staff pay and benefits as well. So I don't know if there's any others, not seeing any. Oh, I do see one from Ethan. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our ad hoc committee on how to properly pay tribute to Father John met recently, and we're talking about different concepts for a annual service award in Father John's memory. So more details on that coming soon. And I'll pass it over to Catherine to provide an update on our nightlife initiative.
Yeah, just as a brief update, we met with Ash, Louise, Kimberly, and Mia with the Rec and Park District, and we decided on the date and time for our community meeting. So it's going to be May 12th at 5:30 p.m. And there will be more details and like a flyer set up soon, but I just wanted to throw that date out there so that you all had that in your calendar if you wanted to come. So we're going to start really reaching out to stakeholders in the meantime, and we're really excited to get this process going. I don't know if Marcos or Ethan, you have anything to add. But.
Catherine, is that an in-person or is that a Zoom meeting?
Zoom.
Zoom, okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, great work. Director Freeman.
One thing on the previous committee, so the which I actually was not at that meeting. There was a mix-up in the emails sending me the time for it. But the my understanding is that it was an update on my previous report on this, is that instead of it being a new policy being looked at in that committee, will now be sent to policy committee. So then in my conversation with Jonathan, that looked like something that, as far as I could tell, we would have to mention at the board level, and he suggested it would be done during the reports, because now there's this like handoff that has to be done, particularly since I'm, while I missed that meeting almost like usefully, I'm on both committees. So it makes certain then that the full board knows that there was something that was done at that board, at that committee, that is now being brought to the other committee. And I don't know if Ross thinks that we need to specifically provide some kind of detail on that. So I see Ross turned over here. So in the committee for how to properly recognize the service of Father John, that committee was looking at having a policy proposal, which is now they're interested in bringing to the policy committee. And so I'm wondering and I'm on both committees, although I was not at the meeting where they discussed this, but I do know that it happened. So what needs to happen?
Just the transmission of the issue from the one committee to the other. The policy aspect is within the policy committee's jurisdiction. It's why it's there. So just a simple transmittal. And it doesn't need necessarily to be documented. But in this case, since the meeting is being recorded, you have your documentation of the transmission of the issue. So I think you're probably fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Now we're going to move to, well, I would say report from district council. You have anything other than what you shared with us a couple moments ago?
Two brief things. One, we do have some chatter through the statewide organizations, League of California Cities and the California Association of Councils of counties and CSDA. Generally, we're expecting the governor's, we were expecting the governor to take some type of action in June to start rolling back some of the executive orders and measures. We've had some confirmation of that in the press in the past week or so. So that's really, I think, establishing the front end of when we could see some of these executive orders with respect to the remote participation for board members and the public to start getting some traction and having more. All of those agencies are pressing the governor's office to get some more specific guidance because the legislative process is still working its way out. And because this has become the status quo for the past 13 plus months, they're asking for a little bit more understanding from the governor's office on what that timing might look like, so that they can transition their legislative members, their city councils and district boards, and members of the public back to physically meeting in person. And on a separate note, I'm ready to meet in person whenever, because I got both my vaccines and I'm good to go.
Excellent. Congratulations. Glad to hear that. Okay, report from general manager.
Great. I'm behind Ross. I'm getting my second vaccine next week, so a little behind. So report from general manager. Well, first thing is we are still working hard to finalize the STEP grant. It's kind of an endless an endless black hole with the state of California to get this grant finalized. So hopefully I keep telling you it's going to hopefully come at the next meeting. So I'm not going to say it this time to not jinx it, but we're working on it earnestly. I think we've resolved everything. GSRMA actually was really fantastic in helping work through the state. The Compost Collective, we're starting work on the job description for that program manager to bring forward for approval, and we're purchasing the electric bike finally this week, but it won't arrive for another few months, so we'll have time to secure the final storage location, which we have options. Retreat follow-up, we've got two major projects in the wrap-up phase now with the staff pay and the community engagement director that came out of that. So, we'll wrap those up and move on to other retreat outcomes. Finance and budget, just wanted to highlight, the great work our interns did on promoting everything. We've got paid ads, we've got classes, sending out emails, organic sharing, asking other organizations in town to share our posts. So it's been really good. We have over 80 people who filled out the budget survey so far with some thoughtful answers, and just ask the board if you can do your last push to get people to fill out the survey or to attend the town hall tomorrow. That'd be great. And there's a whole page on our website as we've sent out. And we're working on getting it translated. We're working with some UCSB grad students in Spanish to get it translated, building that partnership, and then getting the Spanish version sent out through our food distribution system and our partners there. So next up, the UCPD contracts. I mentioned last time that we're talking about those. We really need to, they're planning to come forward in the May meetings to present their annual updates, but we should really maybe right after that happens or in conjunction. Our work group that has met on these issues on the contracts, we need to finalize our definitions of how we want to apply our resolution 9 to those negotiations. So that's a significant work potentially or not on what we want to make that definition to be. I mentioned the vaccines that we're working on to getting a mobile clinic. I met with the food distribution. Leonore and Ashley, who's the executive director at the Channel Islands YMCA, starting to talk to them about coming to the board to present the outcomes and progress of the program, and they are talking about other partnerships and services that they'd want to seek funding and support for. So I said, we'll have that discussion throughout the budget process, but they've raised that. Next week, our Ivy Beautiful staff and Deborah and the interns and potentially me, I'm getting my vaccine in the middle of this conference or at the beginning of it. There's going to be a conference on on a civic summit from C-Click-Fix. So there's sessions on community engagement and anonymous reporting to law enforcement, how to best utilize and get utilization of C-Click-Fix. So most of the sessions are free, but we're paying for some of them, the ones that are specifically about how to best get the app to be utilized. So we're doing that. And one thing I've realized that I need to be reporting to the board is our Public Record Act requests. I think we put that in our policies, and I'll update you on those things. So we've gotten 4 since the last board meetings. In 2 weeks, we've gotten like 4 from one individual on the Compost Collective program. So that's a extra work on our staff to compile. Not all of it too much, but sometimes it can be. Ross is very helpful in answering all my new questions that I've never done this before. So want to make sure we do this right. And lastly, we have a lot of work through the end of June mapped out, like I mentioned before. That's all on a delicate balance to make sure it all gets done on the right timeline and all that. One major thing is next Friday, we're going to need to have a special meeting and we can notice it early or let the public know it's happening early, but our LAFCO municipal services review is due on the 8th of May, and we're able to submit it I don't want to say incomplete, but not fully complete, because we can keep adding data as we get it over the weeks and months, and that's something the executive officer of LAFCO confirmed to me verbally and in writing. So, but we want to still submit a mostly complete version by next week. So that's something I need to work. If anyone is interested in helping, giving input, I'd appreciate it. That'd be good. I mean, I'll do a lot of the writing, but help on framing and describing is always appreciated. So that's going to take up a good amount of time, though, to make sure that we get a good product out of that. So things are coming up, and the timeline is very delicate. And next meeting, for example, we're going to have the STEP grant. I'm not going to say the STEP grant. Hopefully the STEP grant is ready. We'll have the annual review, at least from the safety stations, if not from the interpersonal violence investigator program as well. We told them one of the meetings in May. We're going to do the engagement position again. We'll approve that, hopefully at that meeting. The STEP presentation will come on May 11th, and that's it for now. And then the special meeting, right before to do the MSR. So we have a lot coming up, and that's on top of the budget process and other things that are happening as we're going. So just wanted to keep you updated of the different balls in the air that we have, and that we're working to get working deadlines to make sure we have everything ready for the board meeting. So that's the report.
Any questions for Jonathan? Director Deschler.
Yeah, I have the same thought every time you give your report, and I'm just always it's enormous, the amount of work you all are doing, enormous. And I just wonder if you have the authority or need the authority or want the authority to bring on somebody temporarily to help you with some, as an assistant, just to help with some of the tasks that you're doing, even helping to do some writing under your, direction. It just seems like you are really, we're putting a lot on you. And I just wonder if you need that type of help.
No, thank you. It is a little difficult, in terms of, making sure we have meetings happen, but also like time to produce the reports for the board to read. I just don't know, just the thought of that is nice, but also it's daunting. I'm like, who are we going to find? Who am I going to tell what to do, train? That's brand new. So it's a good offer and I appreciate it, but I am intimidated more by that than by actually doing the work myself. At least for now. And I think the community engagement director will take off a lot that I'm working on. So that'll be good. So yeah, it's a good offer, something to maybe keep thinking about.
Yeah, I would think about it because I do think that there are some mid-career to late career people that have been in governmental type positions that they could step in to help you. But again, it is daunting. It's a lot of effort to have to manage another person. But I do worry that you're very thinly stretched, and I don't think we're letting up on you, and it worries me. So that's all.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think the flexibility we need is some things just might need to change dates on the agenda, which we've been doing as needed. And some things just might need to happen in like parallel timelines. Like for example, the SNAP, we'll get that to the May 11th, and then we'll see as we can meet with stakeholders. That might not happen by May 5th because I'll get my vaccine. I'll be out for a couple of days until the post the agenda. So we'll have to keep doing things in parallel.
I'll just say that Jonathan is an incredibly hard worker, as we all know and see every single board meeting and day. And I know one of his points of pride, and I think should be all of our points of pride, is that when we work with stakeholders, we are routinely waiting on them, often as is case, such as evidence in the STEP grant, rather than the other way around. So just wanted to give you a bit of praise there. I love the fact that we're so responsive on those things. Okay, without getting too far off agenda, any questions from board members? Okay, with that, our next meeting is going to take place on May 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m. right here on Zoom. We will have our budget town hall ad hoc committee meeting that is happening tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. And we hope to see all of you there as participants. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second.
Motion made by Freeman, seconded by Flaherty. Any last comments for the good of the order from directors or the public? Okay, we'll do roll call vote.
Director Brandt.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
Director Deschler.
Yes.
Bertrand.
Yes.
Director Geis.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Freeman. Yes.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Be safe.
Bye, everybody.
Night. Take care.